And here in today's session, we'll continue from where we left off yesterday. And this is basically our chapter on IT and communication. So we'll complete this portion. And then after that, we have the last chapter left, which is intellectual property rights. So these are the two things that we are going to discuss in today's class. These are two portions that we are going to discuss today. Now, first and foremost, when it comes to this particular topic of Internet of Things. Now, what we discussed yesterday was more about all the different forms of wireless communication and how we use wireless communication, different forms of wireless communication, and the basic properties of all of them. Now, today we are mostly looking into all the other aspects of computing. Now, in this segment, the very first thing that we are discussing is Internet of Things. Now, first and foremost, what do we mean by Internet of Things? So here you have two words, Internet of Things. Now, when we say Internet, we are essentially talking about a network of things. What do we mean by things here? Things basically means that this is where we are talking about different types of electronic devices. So when we connect different types of electronic devices, will be called as Internet of Things. Now, first and foremost, before we even begin, I just want you to go through this particular question. Just read this question, please. Give you the poll because, yeah, so read the question. So by reading the question itself, you'll understand what we mean by Internet of Things. Correct? That this is basically a very good, a proper example of what Internet of Things is, where you have a lot of different devices, electronic devices, that they are connected with one another with the help of internet. So, and they can basically communicate with one another. So in that case, we'll say that it is Internet of Things. So clear what is Internet of Things? Understood? Can we move on to the next topic? But we'll not do that. So when we are talking about Internet of Things, this particular question that you just saw, this question is a prime example of what we mean by Internet of Things, where we have a bunch of different electronic devices which are connected to one another. All right, these all electronic devices are connected to one another. Now, in this particular scenario, when it comes to Internet of Things and how they are connected, basically what we see is that it can be important or it can be useful in a lot of different ways. So one example that you had in that question was about a daily life, or I would not really say daily life, a luxurious life, where you have all these kind of electronic devices that are just connected to one another and they can all do your work and you don't have to do anything. Now, when it comes to Internet of Things, what we basically understand is that in this particular scenario, we are talking about interlinking of a bunch of digital devices, appliances, or vehicles, and everything basically that is electronic in nature. All the electronic devices, everything that is electronic in nature, they can be connected. They can be connected. So because of this connection, we'll basically see that there are a lot of different ways in which they will become useful for us. So for example, there are all these different ways in which they can become important. So for whether it is health monitoring or smart grid in retails, in hospitality and tourism, smart factories, smart cities, smart home, in even in agriculture. So you'll see that there are a lot of ways in which it will become useful. It's just about where you have a lot of different types of electronic devices that are connected to one another, via the internet, or they can communicate with one another. So in that case, we'll say that it is nothing but Internet of Things. So that's why today we see that there are a lot of different ways in which Internet of Things can become useful for us, and we see that the government has been trying to find out different ways, and that is where we see that the government spending has also started to come in this particular segment. So for example, we see that to set up the IoT industry, the government first had announced that uh, an IoT industry worth $15 billion would be set up in India, and a total grant of rupees 18 crores in the initial stage will be given for all the research and development that needs to happen in this particular area. At the same time, if the MSME sector, sorry, or any enterprise which is small enterprise, if it comes uh, if it uses internet of things for any of the things that they are doing, then they will also get up to rupees 6 lakhs per enterprise per annum. So in this manner, there are all these things that in the initial setup of approximately 3-4 years ago, all these kind of spending started with India. And then we saw that apart from that, one very very important thing also has been that it should be included as a part of the curriculum. So there also we see that there are steps that have been taken, that these kind of subjects have become a part of BTech and MTech courses and PhD courses, etc. And at the same time, we see that the government also has envisaged to use internet of things as a part of digital India mission. So in this manner, we see that there are all these things, plus there is the national digital communication policy, and internet of things also is about to become a part of it. So in this manner, there are all these smaller developments that have been happening in the country over the last few years, and that is where we see that slowly and steadily we are growing in the scenario of internet of things. The first example of something that is run by government where internet of things has been used was an airport, the airport near Gantok, that was inaugurated by our prime minister in 2018. This is an airport which has been an internet of things based airport, where the IoT that we are using there is used as an early warning system, as an early warning system against earthquakes. So it will be able to predict and forecast seismic activities as well, and it will act as an early warning system. So in this manner, we see that it's not something which is just related to our homes and our home appliances, but we see that it goes much beyond that. But at the same time, we do understand that there are a lot of problems also that it can create. So for example, the initial setup cost could be high, because you need a lot of high end electronic devices to be connected together. So obviously it is going to be very intensive in its initial budget. Similarly, it might also lead to a lot of job losses, because internet of things simply means that there will be a lot of machines that will be able to communicate with one another and work with one another. So that's why in this particular scenario, there will be there will be chances where a lot of automations happen and a lot of manual work gets lost in this particular scenario. So that's why there are chances of lot of job losses happening when it comes to especially the automation of a lot of processes. Then there are concerns regarding digital surveillance as well. That all these devices which are electronic in nature, and they are, because they are connected to the internet, there are chances that they'll also keep on collecting the data from the users, and the companies which are running these systems, which are running these appliances, they might use this data for their own, creating their own market. So in that manner, they might not, I mean, you might not give the consent for all this data collection, but all these data collection might keep on happening, and there will be a scenario of digital surveillance. Now digital surveillance is a term that has uh, seen its significance in terms of all the mobile phone etc devices also that we have today. That even in the smartphones, we know for sure that many of the apps would be tracking the data, and microphones are working, and the microphones data is also being tracked, and there are so many possibilities that can happen, and all this will be called as digital surveillance. So that's why the concerns regarding digital surveillance in internet of things will be even greater as compared to what we see in today's world. Then reliability of sensors also matter, that whether or not the sensors that are there, whether they are reliable, whether they are working well, because ultimately these are the sensors which will be able to sense the environment and help in establishing the communication. So if at all the sensors are not working well, the communication may not be able to be established well. So that also is a problem. Then there could be a problem of power consumption also, that all these devices of course are electronic in nature, and they'll need electrical supply to run. So that's why you'll need more energy, you'll need more power if there are a lot of IoT devices being used all across the world. Then a lack of international standardization. So meaning that, let's say there is one device which is being produced and manufactured in India, there is there is another device which is being manufactured, let's say in China, something maybe in the US, and all these devices have to work together as a part of the Internet of Things system. So then there can be compatibility issues because there is no standardization with regards to how to make these devices so that they are compatible worldwide. So there are all these issues that we might have. And then lastly, a lack of skilled resources to maintain and run such systems. There also we see that this might be a problem because it's a new technology, it's still a developing technology, and in the coming days we'll still see that there will be a lot of new developments that will keep on happening in this particular segment. And because it's a new technology, there are a lot lesser number of people who are associated with this field. So that also creates one of the issues, and we need to be aware of all these issues as well with regards to the limitations regarding Internet of Things, right? So this was the question that was asked in your paper, and no guesses that shows the day's weather and also indicates the level of water in your overhead tank. After you take some groceries from your refrigerator for making the breakfast, it recognizes the shortage of stock in it and places an order for the supply for fresh grocery items. When you step out of your of your house and lock the doors, all lights, fans, geysers, and AC machines get switched off automatically. On your way to the office, your car warns you about traffic congestion ahead and suggests an alternative route. And if you are late for a meeting, it sends a message to your office accordingly. So for many of you, this might be the ideal life that you are working for, not me. So this basically is what we call as the miracle of Internet of Things, which is not even a future now. This is something that is quite possible today. You have all these home appliances that can connect to the internet, that can be run like this, and it's very easy today to find all these devices in the market, where this you can, if you want, you can make a reality in your homes. Next, we have blockchain technology. Now blockchain technology also as a topic, we see that has been important at least for the last 10, 14, 10, 14, 15 years, since the time that blockchain technology became popular because of cryptocurrencies, because especially of bitcoins. We see that blockchain technology on and off always has been in the news, and it's not only through cryptocurrencies like bitcoins that blockchain technology can be useful. We have seen that it can find its use in a lot of different ways. It can become useful in a lot of different ways. So first and foremost, what do we mean by blockchain technology? We'll try to understand, and how does it function. These are two key areas to understand with regards to blockchain technology. So what we say is that it is a decentralized distributed ledger that records the provenance of a digital asset. All right, records the provenance of a digital asset. Now, what do we mean? So when we say that something is a digital asset, digital asset could be anything that has a digital presence. So for example, digital asset could mean a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. It could be cryptocurrency, all right. It could be nothing but just a simple video. It could be just a simple digital artwork, or a painting, or even something as simple as just a PDF file. So it could be anything. So anything that has a digital presence, anything that is a digital file, you can say that it can become a digital asset. And that is what you can you can protect, or what you can do this particular topic from this scenario. So overall, we see that this is basically what happens with blockchain technology. We see that there are all these different ways in which we can use it. Now what basically do we try to do here? We try to ensure the security and safety of the digital asset. We basically can ensure, this basically ensures the safety and security of the digital asset. Right? Safety and security digital assets. Now, when it comes to this blockchain technology, we also call it as distributed ledger technology, or DLT. Now, what exactly do we do in a blockchain technology? Just try to understand this. Now, here when we say blockchain, all right, when we say blockchain, obviously there are two words that you have here, block and chain. Now, why do we say that it's a blockchain technology? Because in a manner, this is how we represent it, that there are blocks of information, all right? These are blocks of information which are connected via a chain. So that's why it is called as called as the blockchain technology. So these are the chains and these are the blocks. Now, blocks basically they represent the digital asset, meaning that any digital asset that you are using with the help of blockchain technology, there will be a block that will be created in a manner that you can say that, let's say there is a PDF file that you are sending to someone. So let's say you want to send the class notes to somebody. So if you are sending the class notes to somebody, if you want, you can send it via blockchain. If you want, you can create a blockchain and you can actually send that PDF on your own via this blockchain. You do not need any third party, you do not need to go to a company and buy their services and all that. If you know how to program blockchain, you can program blockchain and you can use your own blockchain wherever you want and however you want. So you can basically create these blocks. So you can create a blockchain that every time, now understand this, that when we say that these are blocks and we are representing all the digital assets in these blocks, in a manner you can say that you have a block in which this digital asset is kept securely. All right, this is like you can say a very secured box, and your digital information is logged inside this secured box. So unless and until somebody is good enough, and this is where we see that things become very interesting, that if somebody is very exceptionally good, only then there is a very slight possibility that somebody will be able to break the blockchain. Otherwise we see that people haven't been able to break the blockchain, and that is why it has become so important, because of the security that it provides. So a basic transaction, when it happens in a blockchain technology, a basic transaction will be something like this, that let's say there is a user who requests for transaction. All right, so then in that case a block will be created. A block will be created which represents this transaction, and then after this, once this block has been created, this block will be broadcasted. All right, this block will be broadcasted, and this block that has been broadcasted, we'll see that there are uh, this will be broadcasted to, there are a lot of users who are called as the nodes. So it will be broadcasted to all these nodes, and these nodes would have to validate the transaction. The nodes would have to validate the transactions, and once the nodes validate the transactions, this is where we see that now the blockchain will be created. So a block will be added to the chain, and thus the blockchain will be created and the transaction can be completed. Now the question is, who are these nodes, right? Who are these nodes who have to validate the transaction? Now in a bank, what will happen, that there will be people in the bank who would validate any transaction that you want to do, right? It will go for approvals of people who are there in the system, and they would approve the payment, and then after that you'll be able to use that, or you'll be able to complete that payment. So there is a central structure, right? There is a central structure, there is a bank, and the bank is letting you do those transactions. There are authorized people who are sitting in the bank who are authorized to accept the payment and help you make those payments, and only with their approvals we'll see that there will be a system, a centralized system, which will be tracking all your transactions, which has an idea about each and every transaction that you do. But when it comes to these nodes are decentralized. This node could be anyone. This node could be anyone. So for example, let's say I was doing a transaction. Suppose that I had to send some money to somebody. Let's say I have to send some money to my brother. Now I want to send this money via blockchain, a cryptocurrency. For example, let's say I'm sending a Bitcoin, that I'm sending a Bitcoin to my brother. So what happens is that as soon as I start the transaction, as soon as I initiate the transaction, first and foremost, a block will be created which has this Bitcoin. So as I said, that in a manner, you can just imagine that there is a secured box that has been created and the Bitcoin is placed securely inside it. Now, this block that has been created, it will be just broadcasted, meaning that a copy of this block will be sent to all the nodes in the system. Now, who are the nodes? Nodes basically are users. So for example, let's say I am sending money to my brother, and you all sitting in this classroom, you are the nodes. All right, you are the nodes. So you will all get a copy of this transaction. You'll get a copy of this transaction and you are the ones to validate it. Now the thing about nodes is that the nodes could be anywhere. The nodes could be sitting in Bangalore, could be sitting in Kolkata, could be sitting in Delhi, Mumbai, anywhere in the country or outside the country. If they are connected to the network, if they are connected to that blockchain network, they will just be there as a node. So for example, and the user who is doing these transactions, the user does not know who these nodes are. Neither the nodes know who the users are. So, for example, I do not know where you are sitting right now, correct? I only know you through your names that you represent in the chat. Even there, if you're using fake names, then probably I'll not know about that as well. So, I'll not know about you. I don't know where you are sitting from, whether you are taking the class from Ranchi or Karachi. I don't know that. You're taking the class from Hyderabad of India or Hyderabad of Pakistan. I don't know that. So in this particular scenario, I would have no idea about the nodes. I just know that these nodes are there in the system, and at the same time, even the nodes do not know the user. So in this scenario, unfortunately, you know me. But if it was a blockchain, a cryptocurrency setup, then in that case, even you wouldn't know that who I am. You would just know my username, whatever username I'm using. It could be anything, right? So you do not have any idea about the identity. You do not know my email ID, phone number, Aadhaar card number, anything. Even the name, you do not know what the names are. Similarly, I do not know about the nodes. I do not know what the names are. I do not know what uh, these the email IDs or any kind of identification about the nodes. So that's why what happens is that the nodes are under no obligation to do or validate any transaction. All right. Why are they then validating the transaction? Because they will gain something out of it. For every correct validation that the nodes do, the nodes will be paid for it. Every correct validation that the nodes do, the nodes will be paid for it. So that is why the nodes would do the correct validation. If they do wrong validation, then of course they'll not be paid for it. So for that, they'll have to do a validation, and if they're able to validate the transactions correctly, then in that case they might get some amount of, let's say, cryptocurrency itself perhaps paid for doing the correct validations. So when the validations are done, once the transaction has been validated by the nodes, then only the transaction goes forward. Now here, another question is, how do the validations happen? Is it just a simple yes or no, that there will be a dialog box that appears on their screen and they are being asked, do you want to validate the transaction? They press yes and they get paid. Are the things that simple? Unfortunately not. Otherwise, why to do anything else? Everyone will just go and become a node and make it as easy money. But the the things are not that simple here. In case of the nodes also, for the nodes to validate the transaction, they have to solve a complex mathematical problem. So I know half of you already lost the interest. As I said, complex mathematical problem. So there is a complex mathematical problem to be solved, and only then the validations can be the transactions can be validated. So it's not easy job for the node also. They'll also have to sit with very high end systems, because they have to do very enormous calculations that your normal calculator or normal laptops etc can't do. So they'll also have to buy high end systems which also consume a lot of energy, and they'll also have to keep investing on it. Then only they gain something. So it's not that it's a very simple thing and they'll be able to validate and everything is happily happening from them. No, it's not. So that's why In this manner, we have created a system where the user does not know the nodes do not know who the user are. So everyone is here in this system for their own good. Correct? They're here for their own good. So it's not that they are gaining or losing something because of somebody else. So that's why we see that it becomes a decentralized distributed system, right? It becomes a decentralized distributed system which becomes highly secured for the way it functions. And for example, let's say if I wanted to do a fraudulent transaction, uh, then in that case I can't, because it will be invalidated by the nodes. And it's not even that I know the nodes. Correct? I don't know the nodes. Even if, let's say, I try to reach them privately, then even then there is no guarantee that let's say I reach out to some of you who are the nodes, and I give you some money that please validate my fraud transaction. For that I give you some money. I would have reached out to you through your username or your pseudonym, etc. So I still do not know who you are. So there is no guarantee that even after taking that money, what you're going to do with it. So maybe you just take the money and still invalidate my transaction. And I can't do anything because I don't know who you are and I don't know where you are. So that's why in this particular scenario, it becomes very, very difficult for somebody to break all this. And one more thing that becomes very, very crucial in this particular scenario is that one thing is that fine, user is for its own good and the node is here for its own for their own good. So everyone is for their own happiness, basically, you can say. Now when we talk about this blockchain, there is another property that becomes very, very crucial in this particular scenario, and that's the property of these blocks being connected to the chains. And the blocks that have been added once, they cannot be removed from this blockchain. Once you've added the block in the blockchain, you cannot remove the block from the blockchain. So it's just like, let's say, for example, if you are writing an email to somebody. So if you are writing an email to somebody, then in that case, what happens is that as soon as you send that email to whoever you are sending it to, you cannot delete it after that. Once it has been sent, you cannot delete it. So maybe let's say there are 4 or 5 people in the email chain, and everyone is just replying one after the other. So there is an email chain that will be created. Correct? An email chain will be created, and it's not that out of the 5 messages that you have in the email chain, you can go and delete the second one. You cannot. You can delete it from your own inbox, but that doesn't help. It's like ostrich putting its head in the sand and thinking that it's safe. So that will be the scenario if you just want to delete that email from your email box. So something similar happens here, that the block that has been added once, it cannot be removed or modified. And even if you try to modify it, the entire system would know about that modification. If somebody tries to modify that system, everyone will know about the modification, because each and every modification also is time stamped. So when the modification was done, when the block was added, all these things are also time stamped. So if somebody tries it, it will be quickly caught and it can be shut down quickly. So that's why even if somebody is trying to hack into the system or trying to modify the system or modify the blockchain, still it cannot be done. So that's why there are a lot of different things that are there, a lot of different mechanisms that are working together to make this blockchain extremely safe and secure, right? And that is why we see that blockchain network blockchain network becomes very, very safe. Now, so that's it. These are all the properties that we have with the blockchain. So first, as we discussed, that it is a distributed system. So distributed system meaning that all the network participants, meaning the nodes, all the network participants or the nodes have a copy of the ledger for complete transparency, right? So everybody has a copy of what's happening, and every time a new uh, transaction is happening or a new procedure is happening, everyone keeps getting the copy of anything new. So that's why it becomes very, very crucial from this perspective. Then we say that it is immutable, meaning that all the records are irreversible, something that we discussed, that blocks, I'm just writing it here, the blocks once added can't be removed. So this is what we mean by immutability, that once you've added a block to the blockchain, you cannot remove that block anymore. Then all the transactions are timestamped. So we discussed about this, that this is one of the ways in which we would always know about the transactions. So for example, let's say out of the three boxes that we have, suppose that first box was added at 2 p.m., second box was added at 3 p.m., and there was the third box that was added at 4 p.m. All right. So they all have become a part of blockchain technology. But in case, let's say somebody tries to hack into the system at 6 o'clock, comes at 6 p.m. and tries to hack into the second block, then what happens is that the time of this block would change to 6 p.m. So now it would look like this: 2 p.m., 6 p.m., and 4 p.m., which will be a clear indication that somebody tried to modify the block or somebody tried to uh, play around with the block. So that's why we see that there are all these precautions that is also helping. Then we say that it is a unanimous system. So unanimous system because all the participating nodes, all the participating nodes have to validate the transaction. If anyone does not validate, then the transaction will not go forward. They either should not participate, meaning that they should neither say yes or no, or they should be able to validate. If they are not validating, then in that case, I mean, if they are not participating, if they are participating and rejecting it, then the entire transaction will be rejected. Just like how we talk about the UN General Secretary and uh, we uh, uh, sorry, Security Council, and there we say that there all the member countries, they have a veto, right? There are certain countries who have the veto power. Veto power means what? That if any one of those countries, if they reject a proposal, it completely gets rejected. So something similar happens here also, that each and every node that we have here, each and every node will also be uh, responsible here for the validity. So that's why it is a unanimous system. So basically what we mean is every participating every participating node should validate the transaction. Then after that, it is an anonymous system. So we discussed about this as well, that everyone who you have here is anonymous or is using some kind of username or pseudonym or something like this. So that's why we would never know uh, the actual identity of the nodes or the participant. Maybe every node has some kind of variation of the same name. Maybe every node has a name Angel Priya, and you never know who that Angel Priya is. So something similar happens in this particular scenario, that everybody is using a username, right? Everybody is using a username, and you only know about that username and you do not know anything else. You do not know who they are. Then after that, it is also a secure system. It is also a secure system because all the records are individually encrypted. Each and every block is encrypted. Every block is encrypted. Every block is encrypted. So that's why you cannot know what exactly happens here, or what, I mean, what's there inside the box. It's very difficult to crack it. And then lastly, it is also programmable. Programmable meaning that you can use it as you wish. So for example, let's say there are 20 properties that blockchain has. So you need not use all the 20 properties if you have to use blockchain. You can pick and choose. So for example, let's say if a company is using blockchain for its own purpose, let's say there is a legal firm and the legal firm has received a contract and they want to float this contract to all the people who are working in this legal firm, so that they can just go through this contract once and put in their comments. So obviously here they would not want that the employees are anonymous, right? They wouldn't want the employees to be anonymous. So they will take away that feature of being anonymous. So in this manner, whenever you are programming or whenever you are creating anything with regards to blockchain, you can pick and choose. You can choose what you want, you can choose what you don't. So that's why we basically the properties of blockchain can be chosen by the user or creator of the blockchain. So in this manner, we see that there are all these properties that we get, and because of all these properties, it becomes a very, very secure system. Now, I'm not saying that it's an uncrackable system. It is a crackable system, but uh, right now, of all the encryptions that exist in these kind of areas, there is no encryption which is safer than blockchain. There is no encryption that is safer than blockchain. Uh, Cracking a blockchain technology is one of the most difficult task for any hacker as of today. Now then, there are certain disadvantages also. So for example, there could be a transaction cost for every transaction that you're doing. You probably also have to pay a small amount in transaction cost, so that is there. Then uses excessive energy. Now why uses excessive energy? Because the nodes, as we discussed, that the nodes have high end systems that have to keep running, and thus consume a lot of electricity. Then the complexity of the system. Designing the blockchain system is not that easy, and it's very difficult to even understand these very surface level things that we are discussing here. I mean, whatever we have discussed is not even 1% of what blockchain is actually. So we are just discussing the surface of what exactly happens. Even this concept is not that easy to understand. Even this is complex. So that's why designing blockchain is not something that anyone can very easily do. And then lastly, there are storage issues as well, because each and every block is stored by the nodes. So that's why over a period of time, storage would become an issue, because they will keep taking space in their computers and the systems. So that's why there are all these problems and advantages, problems and disadvantages that we have with the blockchain technology. Now, one thing that has been using cryptocurrency, or which has been using blockchain, has been cryptocurrency. And with cryptocurrencies, which what we have seen is that they have become very popular over the last decade or so, and they are being used a lot in many of the countries. Although in India right now, the use of cryptocurrency is not allowed. Only trading in the cryptocurrency is allowed in India. So so that is basically what we have seen with regards to cryptocurrencies. That you might have seen that a lot of people also trade, just like how people trade in stock markets. Similarly, you have the cryptocurrency market also, where a lot of people also they trade a lot. So that's why similar trading, just like stock market, can be done in case of cryptocurrencies. And some of the famous ones, we see that they actually are doing it. In many countries, it is also allowed to use cryptocurrencies, although in a limited manner in most of the cases, but we do see that it is allowed. So for example, it is a digital asset designed to work as a medium of exchange that uses strong cryptography to secure financial transactions, control the creation of additional units, and verify the transfer of assets. So in this manner, we see that cryptocurrencies can be used. And the first blockchain based cryptocurrency was Bitcoin, which right now is the most popular of all the cryptocurrencies that are being used in the world. Then there is something called as NFT, or non fungible tokens. non-fungible token, NFT. Now, non-fungible token or NFT is a way in which you can get the copy of a digital asset. You can get a copy of the digital asset and a specific copy. So, for example, let's say it's just like how your train tickets are or your flight tickets are, or let's say if you see the boarding pass, etc., or the train ticket or any ticket, even movie ticket for that matter, what you'll see is that every ticket for every seat looks alike. Correct? Every ticket looks similar, but there is a difference. For example, in your ticket, your seat numbers would be written, or maybe your name would be written. That is a difference. Otherwise, design is the same, so everyone is getting a similar looking ticket, just that the names and the seat numbers, etc., are different. So something similar is non fungible token, where for let's say I am a very renowned painter, a digital artist. So I create a digital art or a painting, and I say that this is a limited edition painting that I've made. I'm just going to give out 10 copies of it all across the world. So to buy those 10 copies, there will be a lot of people who would be interested, and hence they will be getting one copy each. Let's say a signed copy, maybe perhaps with their names written, best compliments for XYZ, and so on. So in this manner, this artwork can be, the limited edition of that artwork can be given to 10 different people. So in this manner, we see that it can be useful. So it can be used in artwork, collectibles, music, gaming, in even keeping education records, or in supply chain, in property ownership, health records. In each and every one of these things, we see that non-fungible tokens can be useful. So that's when non-fungible tokens have become popular, and we see that especially in 2021, all of a sudden we saw that NFTs had become very popular, and people started buying a lot of NFTs also, thinking that uh, the value of these NFTs are also going to rise. And they also bought a lot of weird things which made no sense, but just that everybody saw a future in NFTs. But unfortunately, there wasn't that future that people hoped. And a lot of people lost money. A lot of people lost their money in buying these non fungible tokens, which today make no sense. That why would somebody even try to buy this for such an exorbitant rate at which these people had bought the NFTs. So that's why we see that even NFT also went that way. Read this question. Launching the poll for you. Please mark your answers. Hmm. So 47% of you have marked B, which is the correct answer. Let me just discuss this with you. With reference to bitcoins, sometimes seen in the news, which of the following statements is or are correct? First statement is bitcoins are tracked by the central banks of the countries. That's the entire idea, that we should not be able to track, correct? We discussed that it is a decentralized distributed network, and nobody knows anyone in this entire network. So that's why it is not being tracked. And that is the biggest issue that the governments have had with bitcoins, that why India is not letting bitcoins come to India or being used as a legal tender. One of the reasons is that it cannot be tracked. The transactions cannot be tracked. So that's why it can be used in a lot of illegal activities also. So that's why we don't want that to happen. So that's why this is wrong. Second is anyone with a Bitcoin address can send and receive bitcoins from anyone else with a bitcoin address. This is correct. That all you basically have is a bitcoin address and nothing else, and that address is an encrypted address that nobody knows of. It's just like an email id, that kind of an address. So that's why nobody can track you through it, nobody can know your location or your identity through this address. So this can be done. It just works. It has basically a private and a public key. Private and public keys. So private and public keys are just like bank locker. They are just like the bank locker. Now, why we are saying that it's just like the bank locker? Because in the bank locker, what happens is that there will be two keys. One key lies with you, and the second key will lie with the bank. And unless both the keys are used, you cannot open that locker. Something similar is seen here, that in the blockchain, there will be a private key, the private address that belongs to the user, and then there is the public key of this entire blockchain network itself. So, unless both the keys are used by two end users, the transaction between them cannot be established. So that's why this is correct. Second is, the third statement is, online payments can be sent without either side knowing the identity of the other. This is true, correct? This can be done anyway. So that's why correct answer will be B, 2 and 3 only. Now coming to the next topic, and this is about supercomputers. Now in case of supercomputers, what we basically see is that these are special purpose computers. These are not like our normal computers that we use day to day. These are special purpose computers. As you can see the picture, that this is not a computer, this is not what you imagine as a computer, right? This is a room instead of a computer, room of servers basically, instead of a computer. So that is what a supercomputer is, where you have very special purpose computers. Now why do we call it as a supercomputer? The reason is that these are very fast. These computers, these are very fast, and that is why they are called as supercomputers. And right now, in a manner, you can say that these are computers that are working at the fastest speed possible for a computer. All right, these work at the fastest speeds possible currently for any given computer. So that is what we have as a supercomputer. So a computer that performs at or near the current highest operational rates for computers. Now, in this particular scenario, what we are also saying is that it is a special purpose computer. Our basic computers, the laptops, etc., that we use, or mobile phones that we use, they are called as general purpose computers because they can do a lot of different activities, a lot of different things for us. But these kind of computers, these are special purpose computers, meaning that they are made to do a certain job, and it can do only that certain job, but at a speed that is the highest speed possible right now for any computing system. So that's why we see that this is how supercomputers get their name. Now, when it comes to these supercomputers, they their measure of speed is done in terms of petaflops. All right, it is done in terms of petaflops. Now, how much is peta? How much is one peta? The prefix that we are using here, peta. How much is one peta? Any idea? Anyone who remembers? Yeah, Shamil, you are correct. Aniket, you are correct. Yeah. So see, this is how we go. You might know about kilo. How much is kilo? Kilo is 10 to the power of 3. Then after that you have mega. Mega is how much? Mega is 10 to the power of 6. Then you have giga. Giga is 10 to the power of 9. And then comes tera. Tera is 10 to the power of 12. And then comes peta. Peta is 10 to the power of 15. And if you want to go one step further, you have exa. Exa is 10 to the power of 18. So when we say petaflops, Petaflops means 10 to the power of 15 flops. Now, what are flops? As you see here, floating point operations per second. Now, floating point operations are nothing but the normal arithmetic, addition, subtraction, division, etc. They're all called as floating point operations. So, these are nothing but addition, division, etc. All right, these are called as floating point operations. So what we are saying here is that if, let's say, any supercomputer has a speed of 1 petaflop, it means that it has a speed of 10 to the power of 15, or it can do 10 to the power of 15 calculations in 1 second. That is 1 petaflop. So 1 petaflop would be 1 petaflop would be 10 to the power of 15 calculations, 10 to the power of 15 calculations in 1 second. 10 to the power of 15 calculations in 1 second. So that is what 1 petaflop is. So it's an extremely fast speed, right? It's an extremely fast speed. So what we right now see is that the world's fastest supercomputer is it has a power efficiency of 1102 petaflops. 1102 petaflops, and this is Frontier supercomputer. Frontier supercomputer has a total speed of 1102 petaflops. So 1102 petaflops, or you can say 1.1 exaflops. So this is a huge speed to have, right? It's a huge speed to have, and this is precisely what we have observed with the Frontier supercomputer, which is the fastest supercomputer in the world right now. Before this, there was another supercomputer that goes by the name Fugaku, and Fugaku had a speed of 442 petaflops. So this was the fastest supercomputer up till 2 years back, and since last 2 years, Frontier has been the fastest supercomputer. So Fugaku belonged to Japan. Frontier belongs to the US. Frontier belongs to the US. So that is basically how we are looking at the supercomputers that we have right now. Now, when it comes to the Indian supercomputers, when it comes to the Indian supercomputers, we first started with our supercomputing mission in 1987. All right, in 1987, for the first time, we started with a national supercomputing mission, and then after that, we slowly and steadily started building a lot of supercomputers. Now, overall, what we have basically seen is that, and since then we have been doing that a lot, and until last year end December 2022, we have developed a total of 15 supercomputers, where we have Param Ananta as the latest supercomputer. Now, when it comes to the Indian supercomputers and their speeds, we have seen that usually the supercomputers that we have, their speeds are in the range of 3 to 6 petaflops. 3 to 6 petaflops in most of the cases. But then we have seen that there is a new supercomputer, which is Param Aravat, and this Aravat has a speed of 13.17 petaflops. So this is the fastest supercomputer of India, or fastest Indian supercomputer. And in the world ranking, if we see, it has been ranked as 75. So now this is the highest ranked supercomputer, highest ranked Indian supercomputer right now. Now, what we basically understand is that, I mean, if you think from that perspective, you will probably think that, okay, fine, the fastest supercomputer is at 1100 petaflops, and where we are sitting with just 13 petaflops. But 13 petaflops is not a bad speed to have by any stretch of imagination. 13 petaflops is a very, very fast speed. And that's why even with 5 or 10 or 13 petaflops, it's a very good speed to have for the computational processes that we need. So even if it is ranked at 75, now it has become the highest ranked supercomputer. Before that, the fastest supercomputer, Indian supercomputer, used to be ranked at 110 to 115. So we see that there is an improvement, and it's good. It's You should not think that it's not working in the manner that we need to. 13 petaflops is a wonderful speed to have on a computer. So national supercomputing mission is something that we started 7 8 years back. 2015 is when we had started with this mission, and this is where we are trying to build Indian supercomputers that will be relevant globally, that can not only solve Indian problems but can also help in solving global problems. So that's where we see that there are all these things with regards to supercomputers and their development in India. Now, when it comes to the applications of supercomputers, we see that there are a lot of different ways in which they can become useful. Anywhere, just remember that wherever we need very fast processing speed, wherever we need very fast processing, we can use supercomputers. We can construct or create supercomputers for anything like that. So that's why climate change studies, studying space and universe, material engineering, pharmaceutical research, data mining, seismic analysis, atomic energy simulations, disaster simulations and management, in all these cases we basically need the data to be processed very very quickly, a lot of data to be processed very quickly, and that is what a supercomputer will enable. And that is where we see that supercomputers become extremely useful in all these cases where we need fast data processing. Now, the last topic that we have in this chapter is about quantum technologies. Now, in case of quantum technologies, what we have basically seen is that past couple of years, or at least you can say in India, since 2018-19, we have been uh, putting a lot of effort in building various things that are related to quantum technologies. Now, first and foremost, when it comes to quantum technologies, we basically are talking about a technology where we are talking about a very small scale, right? We are talking about a very small scale. If you remember, we had discussed about this when we were discussing in nanotechnology also. So quantum technologies are the technologies related to the study of very minute particles, largely atomic or subatomic scale. Atomic or subatomic scale. Now, when it comes to the laws and principles of quantum technologies or quantum mechanics or quantum physics, as it is called, the laws and principles here are very different. We discussed about its at with a very brief discussion we had done about it. So we see that this is basically a technology where the principles are very different. The concepts are very different, and that's why the rules that apply to us, the rules that apply at our level, they do not apply at that level. And the rules that apply at that level are, for us to think of them, they are very weird, that you cannot even imagine that how something like that is even remotely possible, because at our level we'll never observe something like what we have observed in quantum mechanics in at the atomic and the subatomic levels. So so that's why it's a completely different world with different principles, different rules, and different uh, all the laws are different. Now, quantum mechanics is a very complex science. I mean, it's a very complex science, and that is basically what this meme also is trying to represent, that it's not easy to understand what exactly quantum technologies are about. It's very, very difficult to understand, and for obvious reasons we cannot go into the details of it. But in one line there are things that you should understand about the basic principles that govern quantum technologies, because these basic principles in one way or the other will be in the news. They will be discussed in various different technologies that India is trying to implement, or somebody big in the world is trying to implement. So that's why you should just know about these kind of scenarios. Now, just try to understand these basics of the principles. The first principle is wave particle duality. Right? The first principle is wave particle duality. Now, in wave particle duality, what are we saying? We are saying that these particles, these subatomic particles, they can exist both as waves and particles. They can exist as both waves and particles, and they can show the properties of being both waves and particles. So for example, let's say when we discussed about the scanning tunneling microscope, so there we discussed that electron will move like a wave and get inside, right? It will get inside the material by moving like a wave. But in general we count the number of particles of electrons, correct? We say that okay, oxygen has 8 electrons and carbon has 6 electrons and so on. So there we are counting the number of electrons because these are electron particles. But at the same time, the same electrons can also exist as waves. They can also show wave like nature. So that is basically what happens, and this is what anyone who knows what this film is, or is it too old for you? Yeah. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I'll tell you. But yeah, it is Nagin, where the film Nagin, where she was, or was it Nagin, or yeah, Nagin. So where she was playing a Nagin, where she could take two forms. She could have the human form and she could have the snake form as well. So that basically what we mean by wave particle duality, that she could exist like a wave and she could exist like a person, which you can say in a manner is the particle form of her. So that is now these properties, that's why just remember that these properties uh, are actually possible in case of the quantum particles. Now the second particle or second property which is very, very crucial is the property of superposition. Now, in case of superposition, what we say is that the particles can exist in multiple states at the same time, multiple states at the same time, or they can exist in different energy levels at the same time. So that's why this is again something which is not thinkable at our level, that you will think that okay, one person can exist in multiple states at the same time, or have can have multiple existence at the same time. But in this particular scenario, even this is possible. With the subatomic particles, this is also possible. So that is basically what we see with superposition principle, which was actually shown in this film, Everything Everywhere All at Once, the film that got Oscars last year, won the Oscar for the best film last year. This is the concept that they actually represented in this particular film, where they showed quantum superposition of all the characters in the film. They could have different realities at the same time, so they could exist as different people at the same time. So that basically happens in superposition, where we are saying that a particle can exist in multiple states at the same time. So that will be said to be superposition principle. Then there is the uncertainty principle. Now, uncertainty principle basically says that it is impossible for us to simultaneously determine the exact position and momentum of a particle. Or in a manner, you can say that exact position and speed of the particle. All right. So you would either know about the position or you would know about their speed. You can't know both at the same time. So this is what the uncertainty principle says, that you can't know about everything at the same time. You would either know the exact position or you would know the exact momentum. Both you cannot know at the same time. Now, this uncertainty principle, there is a very famous example that is taken, and this is the example of Schrodinger's cat. Now, Schrodinger was a scientist who had devised this uncertainty principle and who had given all the equations, etc., regarding the uncertainty principle. And in the example that is given for this, what we basically see is uh, what we basically see in this particular scenario is that it is representing a cat about whom you do not know whether the cat is dead or alive. The cat could be dead and alive both at the same time for you. How exactly? It is saying that let's take a box, all right, and inside the box you have a cat, and then let's say by some means you try to kill that cat. Let's suppose that you take a knife and you try to stab the cat through the box. Now, whether the cat died or did not die, you do not know. You would only know about it if you open the box. When you open the box, then only you know whether the cat is dead or alive. Until the time you open the box, for you, the cat is both dead and alive. This is what this principle says, that until you do not know, you do not know. Once you know, then you know. So this is basically what this principle says, that simultaneously you cannot know about the states. You can either know about uh, position with higher probability, or you can know about its momentum or speed with higher probability. You cannot know both at the same time with high probability. So that's why I said that this is also very weird to think of. Just suppose that you are driving a car somewhere, and you are saying that I would either be able to know about at what speed you are driving the car, or I'll know where you are in that car. I can't know both at the same time. So something like this never happens at our level. But again, at some subatomic level, we see that something like this is actually possible. Then there is a very, very important concept of entanglement. Now, entanglement is where we talk about two particles that become correlated in such a way that state of one particle affects the state of other particle, even when they are separated by large distance. All right. Even if they are separated by large distance, even then their properties would be connected to one another. Now, this, I mean, I don't know whether this film is also old for you or not, but there are films like this where uh, we have twins, right? Twin brothers or twin sisters, where we see that twin brothers or twin sisters would be shown in films to be connected in some way. That if, for example, in this film, if you just go and beat thrash one Salman Khan, the other Salman Khan also gets slapped. So because they are connected by their properties, although they are not in the same place, they're not in the same area, but even then, if somebody slaps one Salman Khan, the other one also gets slapped. So that is basically what the property of entanglement is, where we are saying that there are two bodies, or there are two particles rather, and the properties of these two particles are connected, even though they are not next to each other, they're not near each other, they are separated by a long distance. Even then, if they are correlated, then in that case their properties are uh, always related. So for example, and this is something that was first again shown by Albert Einstein. Now, Albert Einstein, he used to call this spooky action at a distance. He said that this was spooky action at distance. So because he predicted these properties of the subatomic particles. So then in that case, we see that this basically was given as a principle by him, was predicted by him first, and then after that we see that it was well established later on. Quantum entanglement very recently also got a Nobel Prize in physics also. So so that's why we see that this also becomes a very crucial property in this particular scenario. So first it was Albert Einstein to show this property, and then the famous scientist David Dhawan in Bollywood, who showed this property in his films. I'm joking. Then you have quantum tunneling. Now, quantum tunneling is what we discussed in scanning tunneling microscope, where we discussed that there are these subatomic particles like electrons, which will be able to enter inside the surface. And this is what has been shown in this film, if anyone has seen. This is Ant-Man. So in Ant-Man, if you've seen this film, what they show is that this protagonist would be able to shrink themselves, and they'll be able to shrink themselves and enter inside something called as a quantum realm. Now in reality there is no quantum realm, but they basically showcased the property of tunneling, where you'll be able to get through the energy level, you'll be able to break the energy barriers and enter inside a material. But not you, of course. By you I mean electrons. So where electrons, or let's say even other subatomic particles, photons, etc., light particles also, they'll be able to enter inside a particular material by breaking their energy barrier. So that is basically what we see, that a particle can pass through a potential barrier even when it does not have enough energy to overcome the barrier. So in this manner we see that they'll be able to enter inside that particular scenario, I mean material. So these are some of the principles. So just in one line each, I don't want you to go into the details. It's impossible for you if you don't come from that background. It's impossible for you to even understand a single word of the explanations. So that's why just basically one line each. That this is the principle. This is what the principle means. This is the name of the principle. This is what it means. That's it. Don't go beyond that. They can't ask you a question beyond that. Now, coming to a very, very important topic, and this is the topic of quantum computing. Now, quantum computing is a kind of computing which is based on the properties of quantum physics. A kind of computer that is based on the properties of quantum physics. So, all these basic properties that we are talking about, there are two of those principles that we make the use of, and these are superposition and entanglement. So by using superposition and entanglement, we construct a kind of computer which are called as quantum computers. Now what's the speciality about quantum computers? That instead of using the normal memory units which are called as bits, if you know about the basics of computers, you might have come across this term bit, which represents which is represented by a bunch of zeros and ones, correct? So this is a basic memory unit of computer. This is the memory unit of a computer. Memory unit of a computer, correct? And this in a manner basically is the language that the computers understand. So even if we type all our instructions in English or any language, it would first translate it to its own language, which is zeros and ones. So all that you type first gets converted to zeros and ones, and they understand zeros and ones. They give you the output in zeros and ones, then it gets translated back to English so that we could understand. So this is how we see that the computers work. Now, in case of quantum computing, instead of using bits, we use qubits or quantum bits. Instead of normal bits, we use quantum bits. And these quantum bits become the memory unit. Now, in this particular scenario, what we see is that superposition and entanglement become two principles on which a quantum computer is based. Now, these qubits that we are discussing here, how exactly they function, let me just give you a basic idea of what happens. That let's say if we have a normal computer, all right, let's say we have a normal computer versus a quantum computer. So for a normal computer, we know that the memory units are zeros and ones, right? Zeros and ones. Let's say if it's a 3-bit system, if we are designing a 3-bit system, then in that case there will be 2 to the power of 3 bits, meaning 8 bits. It's always 2 to the power of n. So if there were a 4-bit system, it would be 16 bits. 5-bit system, 32 bits, and so on. So how does it, what do we mean by this? Sorry, these are not bits but rather states. So there are all these states in which a 3-bit system can exist. How exactly? You have just zeros and ones to design. So like this: 000, 001, 010, 100, 101, 110, 011, and then 111. Correct? So these are the 8 states that will be produced if you have only 3 bits to be used. And if you had 4 bits, you would produce 16 states. Now, what happens in a normal computer is that first this state will be computed, then after that this state will be computed, then this state will be computed, then this state will be computed, and so on. All right. So in this manner, what happens is that all this happens sequentially or serially. So there is a sequential computation. Sequential computation. So if let's say that if every state was taking 1 second for computation to happen, then in total what happens is that you would have taken a total of 8 seconds to complete this, right? 8 seconds to complete this. So this is how it goes, right? This is how a normal computer would do its computation. Now in terms of quantum computer, what we would see is, so these are what? These are bits. Now the memory unit that we are using in case of quantum computers is again a bunch of zeros and ones, but these are quantum bits or qubits. These are quantum bits or qubits. So here also, let's say if we have a 3-bit system, suppose that here also we are creating a 3-bit system. This also means that there will be 2 to the power of 3, that is 8 states. So the same 8 states: 000, 001, 010, 100, 101, 110, 011, and 111. So there are all these 8 states that we have. Now this time what happens is that all these states, all right, all these states will be computed at once. So all these states will be computed at once. So basically there will be a parallel computation. There will be a parallel computation, meaning that it would take a total of just 1 second to do this computation. So this will happen just in 1 second. So in the first case, it was happening in 8 seconds. This time it is happening in 1 second. Now what happens is that even if you keep on increasing the number of bits, in case of a normal computer, it will keep taking more time, because ultimately it needs some time to get through every state. But in case of quantum computing, because of superposition and entanglement principles, that all the properties of these qubits are connected, and they all can exist in multiple states at the same time. So that's why now what happens is that very quickly we'll see that it will all happen, and uh, we'll be able to get all the work done much quicker. So forget about a normal computer that we use. Even compared to a supercomputer, the quantum computers will be extremely fast. So even a supercomputer will not be a match for the speed that quantum computers would have. So this is what we are looking at when it comes to quantum computers. Now, these qubits that we are using in quantum computers, they are not easy to work with. There are very special conditions, isolated conditions, that you need for these qubits to work. So for example, we need temperature that is almost at absolute zero, meaning that almost minus 270 degrees Celsius. You need it completely isolated, no air molecules, no heating, nothing from outside, nothing external. Otherwise they can lose their quantum properties very quickly. They would lose their quantum properties very quickly, which is also called as quantum decoherence. Quantum decoherence. So that's why heat, electromagnetic fields, collision with air molecules, etc., all these things can lead to these quantum bits or qubits losing their properties. And if they lose their properties, then in that case it is called as quantum decoherence. And that's why there are additional qubits required. There are additional qubits required so that they can, if at all something goes wrong, will be able to replace them with new qubits. So that's why there are these extreme conditions only under which the quantum computers can work. Now, applications of quantum computers, in a manner you can say that, are very similar to the applications of all the supercomputers that we saw. So everything that we counted as an application of supercomputer can be counted as an application of quantum computer, and vice versa. Because here also we are looking at very fast processing speeds that will be faster than even the supercomputers that we discussed about. So this is where we are right now. Now, there is this one concept of quantum supremacy. Now, quantum supremacy basically is a scenario when a quantum computer is able to perform such a task within seconds that could take a normal computer its entire lifetime. So if such a scenario exists, then it is called as quantum supremacy. Now, what happened is that a few years back, Google came out saying that now we have achieved quantum supremacy, that we have designed quantum computer, and this quantum computer will be able to do such a task within seconds that a normal computer could have taken 10,000 years to complete. 10,000 years to complete, and we have been able to do that within a couple of seconds. So they said that now we have achieved quantum supremacy. But then IBM came forward, and IBM said that no, this is not quantum supremacy, because we have supercomputers that can do this task within a couple of minutes. So the difference is not that great. So please don't call it as quantum supremacy. So in this manner, Google said that it is quantum supremacy, and IBM basically rejected that idea. Then a couple of years after that, IBM also came out and said that now we have achieved quantum supremacy. Google said no. Google also came back with a technical flaw in that and said that no, you also have not achieved quantum supremacy yet. So that's why we see that there are all these things that have been happening, and there is a race, of course, with the biggest of the tech giants. There is a race where they're trying to achieve or make these quantum computers as quickly as possible. Now, when it comes to India, in budget 2020, India had announced a total of 8,000 crores over the next 5 years, so that now we would start working on quantum technologies, and we'll look at different applications of quantum technologies. That where exactly can we use quantum technologies? So that's why all these applications and all these areas where we can use the quantum principles for solutions. So we started working on it. We also started with a mission. The name of the mission is the Quantum Frontier Mission. And as a part of Frontier Mission, we want to build excellence in quantum technologies. So different types of quantum technologies, or different ways in which quantum technologies can be used. We want to understand how to do that and how to uh, create our own space there. So, as a part of this Quantum Frontier mission, we started with Quantum Enabled Science and Technology, or QUEST, to understand or develop a core expertise in developing quantum technologies in India. That the multiple ways in which quantum technologies can be used, whether in chemistry, whether in physics, whether in other kinds of technologies, how exactly and where to be used, all these kind of research and development would happen as a part of this Quest mission. So there are all these. This is basically nothing but a research and development mission. Read this question. This was asked last year in your paper, 2022. Mock me or something. Choose for quantum computers. So that's your correct answer is B. So this was the first time that they asked a question on quantum computers. That's why it was a free pass question, you can say, in a manner. It was a very simple question. But going forward, I don't think that the questions will be that simple. They'll go one step further, and maybe all these quantum principles is where they'll go next, and they'll probably ask questions from there if or when the next question comes. So this is it about this particular chapter. Now, before we begin the next chapter, if you have any doubts, if you want to ask anything, people started buying NFTs thinking that the value of NFTs is going to rise. So initially there was a big jump in the value of those NFTs. So for example, let's say I am an artist and I created 10 NFTs of an artwork that I had created. So there are only 10 pieces of this artwork which is going to be available in the world through NFTs. So there would be 10 people who would bid for these NFTs and they would buy it, thinking that going forward it is going to have in even a bigger price and it is going to have a lot of value in the future. But all of a sudden, NFTs as a topic became very popular and just fizzled out. And then these NFTs had no value. So you bought it for a very huge price, but then it lost all its value in the market. For science and tech, should I go with the NCRTs? I discussed this with you in the first class itself, that their class 6th, 7th, and 8th NCRTs you can go through, and selective topics from class 9th and 10th. Could you please explain cryptocurrency and NFT again? So NFT, I just discussed that what NFT is. At the same time, when we are talking about cryptocurrencies, we are talking about currencies just like money that we are using. Just like that, you have currencies which are working according to blockchain, which basically are working with the principles of blockchain, and these are basically called as cryptocurrencies. So a famous example, or rather you can say the most popular example, is the most popular example is of bitcoins, where we see that this is something that is being used. Processing of a huge amount of data very fast, and data from where we can generate a lot of information. The concept of quantum computing, because we are, when it comes to Majorana, I think it is related to some subatomic particles, or I think antimatter, and they have been looking for those particles, and they find that it could give us a good solution to quantum computing. Can anyone attend online classes on supercomputers? Why not? If you design it, you can. But for such a trivial thing, nobody would uh, invest crores of rupees on just getting this one computer for watching the online lecture. Access to any unknown website. Uh, there are antiviral systems and defenders that can help you with that. Majority of the tech giants like Google or Microsoft, IBM, etc., they have been working on their own quantum computers. And position both at the same time. You would either know about position with high probability, or you would know about speed with high probability. You cannot know about both at the same time. From normal supercomputers in the with neural networks. So if you are employing neural network in making that supercomputer, then it works with AI. Or let's say if Gen AI is being used in making, although with Gen AI we have not made any supercomputers, it's possible. So Aravat is the same case. You are correct. Transaction has happened with the blockchain technology, you would always know about it. So for example, if I make the transaction right now, then the time would show this moment's time. You can define the node. For example, let's say if you have made the system, you can define who the nodes are. You can either keep the nodes anonymous if you want, you can keep the nodes also known if you want. So the user who is creating, the creator who is creating that blockchain network will define who the nodes are, and if they come in contact with the external environment, so they have to be kept very uh, isolated. manufactured in different countries, and every country manufactures its devices with its own set of principles and standards. So that's why, because of different standards being used everywhere, if these devices are being used together, they might not be compatible with one another in multiple states at the same time, would be able to exist in multiple states at the same time. So they can have 10 joules of energy and 20 joules of energy at the same time. Like supercomputers, quantum computers can only able to perform specific task, or it can perform, yeah, just like supercomputers, that they'll also be specific purpose computers. Does qubits work in vacuum? Yes, absolutely. Difference between electrical and electronic devices: electronic devices would have semiconductors in them. Electrical devices, via direct electricity, they can be connected. Why not delete it for everyone, like how in WhatsApp for blockchains and emails? That's what they don't want to do that. If they wanted, they could have done it, but they don't want to do that. That would defeat the entire purpose. Nodes are nothing but users who are there in the network, you can say. Validate the transaction. Otherwise, even if something is wrong and something is being misused in the system, nobody would know if there was no third person to take care of you, take care of that. Lights, electricity devices switched off automatically when the person locks the door. Does the hotel use Internet of Things? Not really. These are sensors basically that will sense that there is nobody present in the room, and hence it will switch off. I mean, if I start counting, there would be more than 30, 40 times that you asked the same question. Receive the parcel after verification from nodes. Basically, when the verification happens, as soon as the verification is completed, the block gets added to the blockchain in a manner that the transaction is completed. So that is where it would go to the other side, because we create those conditions while they are working. When they are not working, it's fine. All these quantum computers, you'll see that there are videos also on it, where you'll find that there are rooms that are created where these quantum computers could work. So just go to the YouTube channel, you'll see that the entire room that they create and how exactly it functions, they've all done it. So let's take a break here, move on. Property rights. Now, in terms of intellectual property rights, first and foremost, we need to understand what do we mean by intellectual property and what are these rights associated with it, plus some of the rules and laws that we have in India and some of the issues that we have been facing. So these are the things that we are going to discuss in this particular section. Now, when it comes to intellectual property rights, all right, intellectual property rights, first and foremost, we are talking about something which is an intellectual property, correct? We are talking about intellectual property, and this intellectual property is something that is also being protected, and hence there are rights which are associated with this intellectual property. Now, when you say that something is intellectual, what's the meaning of the term intellectual? That you are saying that it is related to the intellect, it is related to the brain in a manner, that it should be creation of the brain, correct? So if that's the case, then in that case it becomes intellectual. Wherever you have applied brain, is that's what intellectual is. So when you say intellectual property, it must be creation of the mind, it should be creation of the brain. And when you protect those creations, you say that you provide intellectual property rights for them. So first and foremost, when it comes to intellectual property, these are creations of the mind, such as inventions, literary and artistic works, design, symbols, names, images, etc., which are all used in commerce. Now, from the next thing, when it comes to intellectual property rights, there are multiple different types of intellectual property rights and their examples, and we'll discuss all those examples a little later. But first and foremost, why do we need to protect it? Why do we even need intellectual property rights? So this, in a manner, you can say that this is a question for you, for your mains examination, that why do we need to protect intellectual property? What is the requirement of even having intellectual property rights? So first and foremost, when it comes to the need for protection, there are two ways in which we need to think of it. One from the perspective of the consumer, and secondly from the perspective of the creator. Now, creator's perspective is still easy to understand, because you are saying that okay, somebody has done something, somebody has put in a lot of effort to make something, then obviously give them some kind of protection for whatever they have done, protect them for what they have done, and maybe they'll be able to use them commercially and get something out of it. So that is why for the creator it becomes very crucial that it will improve the capacity to create and invent for the creator, because the creator is protected, and that's why in this safe zone that you are creating for them, safe space that you are creating for them, they'll be able to do more, they'll be able to do better. So that's why for the creator. Similarly, protection also encourages further innovation, a better innovation. A lot of new innovations can happen if you have protected them well, and thus a lot of research and development can happen. So these are all related points, that you will be able to protect them, so their capacity to think and create better will also keep on increasing, and we'll eventually see that more innovations, more research and development could happen in all these particular scenarios. Now, in this particular case, when it comes to the intellectual property rights, one more thing for the creator is the acknowledgement of work. That if not anything, if let's say there is no money involved, if there is nothing that they're getting out of it, at least they're getting the acknowledgement for the work they've done. So at least their name is being used for all the work that they have done, and even the acknowledgement goes a long way. Acknowledgement is also very, very necessary for all these things. So that's why from the creator's perspective it is still easy to understand that why we need to protect. But from consumer perspective also, we understand that we can see a lot of things. For example, it does lead to a better economic growth, it does give us better and more efficient products, more reliable products, because we have seen the things grow. For example, it's a mobile phone. Today the mobile phones that we are getting mobile phones packed with all the features that you can think. You are getting much better processing that you used to, you're getting much better cameras that you are used to, and forget about the main thing that mobile phones do, they help you talk on the phone, they make you mobile, correct? So we are not even thinking about that, because the technology has gone so far, and it could all happen because for these companies that were creating these high value products, great products, their rights were protected. Their rights were protected for each and everything that they were doing, and it did lead to a lot of economic growth. Just imagine the kind of scenario that we are in, the kind of economy that this intellectual property rights have has created around the mobile phone itself. No, it's not only about the mobile phone companies or the service providers, but there's an entire economy that has been created around mobile phones, whether it is through apps that every company is launching, or maybe the online access that everyone is doing, or maybe the online commerce or retail that everyone is doing. Or if not anything, just go around your town and just look at the number of mobile repair shops that you have in your town. So that gives you an idea about that how it has really led to an entire ecosystem being created around this uh, economic growth. So that's where this becomes very, very crucial for us to understand that it's not only the creator who gains out of something like this, but it's also the consumer who gains. So it's a win-win situation for both. Now, when we are saying that there is a need for protection, how do we protect? So there are different types of intellectual property rights that we have. So these are the six major types of IPRs. We have patents, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets, industrial design rights, and geographical indication. So these are the six types of intellectual property rights, and we'll try to understand each one of them one by one. So first one to start with, we have a patent. Now, when it comes to a patent is given for a new work. When you create a new product, or if you create a new process for a product, so in a manner you can say inventions. When you invent something new, when you create something new altogether, then in that case patent would be given for it. Now, patent, what we say is that patents are granted by a sovereign state exclusively to an inventor for a limited period of time, in exchange for detailed public disclosure of the invention. Detailed public disclosure. Now, when we say detailed public disclosure, understand the meaning. Understand the meaning of detailed public disclosure. Detailed public disclosure means that you will have to tell the government each and everything. It will be granted by a sovereign state. So the government of a country has granted you the patent, and while granting you the patent, it will be only granted to you when you do give them the exact information, each and every bit of information about this new invention, whether it's a new process or a new product. You have to give every bit of information: how it was created, what are the things that you have done, how exactly it has been done, what are the kinds of research that you've done. Each and everything about this invention, you'll have to disclose it to the government, and government will then check whether another product exists which is similar to your product. They'll do all that background check, and if they find that there's nothing which is similar or does not have a very high amount of uh, let's say similarity, then in that case patent might be granted to you. So in this manner we see that a detailed public disclosure has to be done. So detailed public disclosure means that detailed public disclosure means that you are informing the government about everything related to the product, all right, or the process, product or the process. So this is basically what we say is detailed public disclosure. Now, for all these patent holders, they'll also be required to pay a definite fee from time to time, so that uh, the patent can also be renewed if at all that is required. So for the renewal of patent, if at all, then they have to pay a definite fee. So this is also doable. That, let's say, something that I invented today, it has a value even 20 years from now, because patent will be given for a limited period. It will be given for a limited period of time. So let's say after that period expires, even then I still hold the value, there's still nothing else that is comparable to my product, then in that case I can extend that patent. So that can be also done. This is also something that can be done. Now, most importantly, when it comes to a patent, we say that patents are territorial rights. Patents are territorial rights, meaning that patents are rights which are territorial in nature, meaning that wherever you have taken that patent, the patent will only be applicable there. All right, the patent will only be applicable where you have taken the patent. So for example, when you go to government of India, and let's say government of India has granted you a patent, then this patent only holds in India. If you go to US and you get the patent from the government of US, then the patent holds only in US. So that's why we see that the patent will only hold in the country where you have been granted that patent, and that is why we say that these are territorial rights. So if you have to get patent in some other country, you'll have to go to the government of that country and get the patent there as well. So this is how patents generally work. And in general, as we discussed, that it will be given for a limited period of time, which is normally 20 years of time. So this is what patent is. So patent will be given for a new product or a new process that you have created, and it will be granted for a limited period of time. It will be applicable only in the country where you have been granted the patent. So in this manner, we see that these are the things related to the patents. Now, another term is copyright. Now, patent is given for a new process or a new product that you are creating. Copyrights, on the other hand, will be given to the creators of the literary, dramatic, musical, artistic works, or producers of cinematography films or sound recordings. So these are the things for which the copyright will be granted. So basically, copyright can be given for all these things. Copyrights can be given for all these things. So literary works such as novels, poems, plays, etc., computer programs and databases, films, music composition, choreography, artistic work such as painting, drawing, photograph, sculpture, architecture, or even advertisements, technical drawings, etc. So for all these things, you will be granted the copyright. All right, all these things you'll be getting the copyright. Now you have to understand something, a basic difference between patents and copyrights. Patents are given to an idea. Patents are given to an idea that when you, let's say, even have a prototype of a product ready, or you have the entire procedure of the product ready, you do not necessarily have to have that product in hand to get the patent. All right, so even if the entire procedure is ready and all the prototypes are ready, then also you can be granted the patent. But copyright will be exclusively given only after the expression has been done. So it will be given only to expression of ideas and not the ideas themselves. All right, extends only to expression of the ideas and not the ideas, meaning that, let's say when, if I write a book, all right, if I write a book, only after I've completed the book I can go and ask for a copyright. It's not that I can just simply go and say that, look, I have an idea to write a new book, so please give me the copyright to this book. No, that can't be given. Copyright will only be applicable once the work is completed, otherwise not. So that's why it extends to expressions of the ideas and not just the ideas. Now overall, the other things, for example, procedures or methods of operation, mathematical concepts, etc., in all these cases copyrights are not applicable. All right, copyrights are not applicable for something which is natural, something which is a concept. So for example, you cannot say that, look, uh, nobody has claimed a copyright over 2 plus 2 equal to 4, so from tomorrow onwards 2 plus 2 equal to 4 belongs to me. Anyone who wants to use 2 plus 2 equal to 4 in their equations, they'll first have to take a license from me, and then only they can use it. So you can't do that with copyrights. Copyrights can only be given to expression of ideas, and these cannot be something which is natural, something which is pre-existing. Now, copyrights, they give you two types of rights called as economic rights and moral rights. Economic rights are where we are talking about the financial rewards from the use of the work. Financial rewards from the use of the work. So that is called as economic right. At the same time, so when you gain something monetarily, all right, when you gain something monetarily, then in that case, these are economic rights. So for example, let's say for a book that I've written, all the revenue that I get from the book, that basically will be called as uh, that will be called as the economic right, whereas moral right is more about the acknowledgement of the work. It is more about the acknowledgement of the work. So basically these are the rights of the creator to properly be attributed or credited for the work that they have done. So it's not directly related to the money that they'll get, but it is about the acknowledgement of the work that they have done. So that's why these are called as moral rights. So these are the two types of rights that we have as a part of copyrights. Now after this we have something called as a trademark. Now, when it comes to a trademark basically is a sign that is capable of distinguishing the goods and services of one enterprise from those of the others. So it could be a sign, a design, or the way in which you are writing the name or a symbol that you're using. All these things basically can be called as trademarks. All right, all these things can be called as trademarks. So, for example, let's say something like this, a logo. So this logo will be a trademark because this will help you distinguish the products and services of Byjus from the products and services of somebody else. So from that perspective, we say that this is nothing but a trademark. So the Byju's logo becomes an example of a trademark. Similarly, there are a lot of ways in which we see a trademark. For example, even it's not only about how you write the names or how you are writing the symbols, how you're using the symbols and etc. It's not always about that. It could be a lot of things. So, for example, let's say a half or a quarter eaten apple. So a quarter eaten apple has a lot of value in the market because it signifies a certain company which has created a good market and reliability for itself over the years. So that's why then in that case you will understand that, okay, fine, this if you have seen a quarter eaten apple, chances are that it belongs to the company Apple, right? So so we know that this is a symbol that signifies this company and the reliability of the company that it has made over the years. And it's not only about the names and the symbols, even the bottles. So for example, let's say the Coca-Cola bottle, right? So Coca-Cola bottle has a specific shape, and the shape does not change. So even that bottle, the shape of the bottle also is a trademark. So they are also registered as a trademark, and nobody else can claim it. So there are all these small things also, that how they are writing the name, what is the size, what is the shape of the bottle, and all these things also actually become a trademark. So a trademark will basically help in distinguishing the products and services of a company from the others. Then after that, we have industrial design rights. Now, in case of industrial design rights, what we basically see in this particular scenario is that this is where we are talking about the protection of visual design of objects and all the aesthetic parameters. Visual design and aesthetic parameters. So it is less to do with the utility of the product, more to do with the design of the product. Now, design of the product also plays a big role in its commerce, in its sell, correct? So it becomes very crucial for us to also see that how much it affects the sales of any given product or service. So for example, let's say the aesthetic value of a car, that even before you would know about the specifics of the car and all the different things about the car, you'll first see its design. The very first thing will be the first look that the company would release, and then after that the specifics of the car will be available. Same goes for a lot of electronic products, let's say like mobile phones, that first they will unveil the first look of the mobile phone, that this is the angle by which the camera this time has been changed. So they basically will release the first look first, and after that maybe they'll tell you, okay, these are the properties and these are the new things that we have done. But this plays a big role. We have seen that especially in the commercial value that these products generate, we see that it plays a big role, and aesthetic parameters become very crucial, even if it is not related directly just to the utility. For example, every car has the same utility. It will help you drive from one place to another, it will help you in transportation, but every car looks different. Every car looks different, and people many a times go and buy the car also for how it looks and not only for the utility. A simple example, the Batman mask. So Batman mask has only one simple job, to conceal the identity of the Batman. Now, to conceal the identity of the Batman, if you see over the years, different comic books or different films and TV shows, etc., they've all used different kinds of Batman masks all the time, but they all basically have the same utility, just that they look different. They look different. They have different aesthetics. Their designs are different, but the designs are not related to the utility. All right, design differences are not related to the utility. So that basically is what we see with industrial design, right? So it can be a two-dimensional or a three-dimensional pattern. So a 2D figure or a 3D figure that can be used to prepare the product, commodity, or handicraft. Then after this, we have something called as trade secrets. Now, trade secrets basically are the ones where you are trying to keep confidential information. So confidential information, that these are information that can be very easily replicated by somebody. So you need to ensure that you do not leak this information out, or you do not make it a public information, because if it becomes public information, then in that case all the commercial value that you are deriving out of this confidential information will be of no use for you anymore. So that's why trade secret. So it has to be commercially valuable because it's a secret. It has to be known to only a limited group of persons, and then it should be subjected to reasonable steps to be taken by the rightful holder of the information to keep it secret. So that's why these information, anyone who knows about this information, they would also be they would have signed confidentiality agreements, and these kind of trade secrets or confidential uh, uh, all these things, so that they can keep the things confidential. And you'll see that there are all these steps that will be taken. They would be bound by the law of the company to ensure that it does not go out. Simple examples: Coca-Cola and your Maggi masala. So Coca-Cola So you have Thumbs Up, you have Coca-Cola, you have Pepsi. They all more or less look the same, correct? But the taste might be little different. So that difference is coming because they are using a specific formula. Now you cannot stop somebody else from using that formula, because you are using ingredients which are common, which are commonly found all across. So you cannot stop anyone from doing it. So for example, let's say if I'm running a restaurant, then in that case, if my restaurant is famous for certain dishes, I would try to keep it as a secret, because I cannot stop anyone else from making the same food, or uh, in a very similar fashion. So for example, if I'm known for my paneer butter masala, then I cannot stop anyone from making the same procedure paneer butter masala, and cannot go in the court saying that I'm making that. So that's why these have to be kept secret, so that only you know it and nobody else knows it. So same goes for Maggi masala, that Maggi has its value in the market, not because of the noodles, but rather because of the spice mix that they give, the masala that they give. That is what holds the value in the market. And if let's say there is a company that can replicate exactly what this Maggi masala is, probably Maggi will lose its value. So that's why these kind of things become very crucial, because once, let's say, if the information is public about Maggi masala, then in that case anyone can replicate it, and they can make their own noodles, and they can make their own brand out of it at maybe a cheaper rate, and wipe out Maggie from the markets. So that's why these are all things possible, and hence they have to be kept a secret. And then lastly, there is geographical indication. Now, geographical indication basically is a sign, a GI tag. This is a sign or a tag that is used on products that have specific geographical origin and possess qualities or reputation that are due to that origin. So, and again, there are a lot of examples that we have in India. So, for example, the GI tags are given to basmati rice, Nagpuri oranges, Kadaknath chicken. So there are all these, and this is a big list. This is a long list where we see that all these geographical indication tags have been given, because they have their own uh, reputation. They have their own reputation because of the geographical origin, because of where they are coming from. And that's why this GI tag plays a big role in their commerce, plays a big role in their making their selling point count. So that's why GI tag matters a lot, and that's why we have also seen that there have been controversies around GI tag. A big controversy has been about Rasgulla. Now, whether the Rasgulla or Roshogulla or Rasgola, whether it belongs to Odisha or whether it belongs to West Bengal, there has been a big fight there. So there are two kinds of the Rasgulla. One that belongs to Odisha. This is the one that belongs to Odisha, and this is the one that belongs to West Bengal. Now they are different in their preparation. They are different there in their preparation. They are different in their origin. Now, preparation wise, for example, as you can see that the Odisha Rasgulla is brownish in color, whereas the West Bengal Rasgulla is whitish in color. And we see that there are differences between them. This one, for example, the Odia Rasgulla is also called as Pahala Rasgulla. This is also called as Pahala Rasgulla, whereas in West Bengal you have the Chena Rasgulla. So there are these two variants, and there have been a lot of fights here. When you trace back the history, you would see that tracing back the history in Odisha probably goes a little more into the medieval times of the country, whereas West Bengal looks to have it a little later. But I don't want to go there, because I know that there are students who are sitting from Odisha as well as West Bengal. I don't want to be killed, so I'll not go into this controversy. But these are two different types of rasgulla that we have, and both have been given the GI tags. All right. Then coming to the national policy on IPR. So national IPR policy basically is something that we devised in 2016. So it's not that until 2016 all the IPRs were unprotected in India. It's not that. We had the Patents Act, we had the Cinematography Act, we had the Copyrights Act, we have the Farmers Rights Act. So there are a lot of these different laws that we already have. But the basic problem you have to understand for India has been that all these acts are not being bunched together, right? So every one of these acts are independently acting. That there is a patent act for only looking after the patents, there is a copyright law for only looking after the copyrights. So all these are working in their silos, they are working in their own protection only. But we saw that there were a lot of different issues that India was facing, a lot of controversies also that was happening. So this is where we understood, and the government understood, that only having all the separate laws is not enough, but we would rather have to have an integrated policy, an integrated policy on IPR that works for everything, that can take every one of these acts and also create some relations between any kind of IPR related problems that we have in India and solve those problems. So that is why, with this need, you can say, with this requirement, the IPR policy of 2016 came into existence. So that is why, when you look at the major objectives of the IPR policy, it goes like this. Now, when it comes to the major objectives, we see that the spreading awareness of on IPR was one of the major objectives, that people need to be aware of what IPRs mean and what IPRs can do for them. So for example, how IPRs can generate value and they can generate money for them, how they can be commercially valuable for people who are holding the IPRs. So people need to understand the various economic, social, and cultural benefits of IPRs. Now, economic, we understand that fine, okay, you can use it in commerce and hence you can generate money for you. But social and cultural benefits, because what also has happened in the past with India is that a lot of IPRs that should ideally have belonged to India, they were lost. They were lost because somebody else got it patented, and we'll discuss about these issues later. But we saw that there were all these issues. So that's why we need to understand the value that we are losing out on our cultural heritage, and that is where also spreading awareness becomes very crucial. Then generation of IPRs. So generation of IPRs are very, very crucial, because as you keep on creating new IPRs, it also means that commercially it will help you in the longer run. So, for example, today we see that the number of patents that are being handed over in India have been increasing in number. For example, I think the data for this year says that there are more than 41,000 41,000 patents that have been granted only in 2023. And if you look at the data of last 10 years, you'll see that India has been one of the top 10 countries with regards to the constantly new IPR generation that has happened in the country. So that's why we have seen that there has been a significant improvement. It was a big problem for us, but we have been able to overcome those problems, and today we see that we have been doing much better. Then the legal and the legislative framework. Now, creating the legal framework is also very, very important, because this is where having a strong and effective IPR laws would also mean better protection, right? It would mean better protection for the Indian IPRs, because otherwise we'll see that uh, very easily IPR battles would be won by the multinational companies which have a better exposure to IPRs. But today we see that there are effective IPR laws in India, and there are effective lawyers in India also who are looking after the IPR related activities in the country. Then similarly, providing the administrative and management framework. So all these would be the major objectives of the IPR policy. So administrative and management, so that administration wise and operationally, whatever we need, we are able to control all those things with regards to the IPR. Then commercialization of the IPRs. So as we discussed, that as you generate more value, as you spread more awareness, there will be generation of more IPRs, and hence there will be commercialization of those IPRs also. And it will also help in trade, and it will help in creating better value for all these things. So that is there. So for example, let's say when you look at the smaller painters today, so let's say if you are talking about a Madhubani painting. Now, in case of Madhubani painting, the painters, they belong to the Madhubani region of Bihar, and they are not very exposed to the entire IPR framework. They were not exposed to the entire IPR framework, so there they would not be able to generate a lot of value out of these IPRs. All right, they would not be able to generate a lot of value out of these IPRs because they don't know what value they hold in the market. So now, under those circumstances, what would happen is that somebody would go to them, let's say a multinational company or a big company that sells artwork, would go to them, buy their work very cheaply, sign some contracts that okay, now we as a company have all the exclusive rights to sell your painting. They have no idea what they have signed. So ultimately, they might have given, let's say, even rupees 1000, that, and they would think that they have been given a lot for that particular painting. Now what this big company would do is that they would create hundreds of copies of this, and they now have the exclusive rights over this painting, the copyrights over this painting. And they probably, if it is a good artwork, they probably are selling it for, let's say, 10,000 or 20,000 a piece. So if they are selling 100 pieces of 10,000 each, it simply means that they have generated 10 lakh rupees out for which they might have paid rupees 1,000. So that's the kind of difference if the people are not aware about the commercialization of IPR and how much value they can actually create or generate. Then, for better enforcement and education of anything related to IPRs or even IPR infringements, we can take care of that well. And then, human capital development, where we are talking about having a robust mechanism for having IPRs in place, and all the people, whether in operations, management, law, creations, all these people also being there as a part of the system. So, looking at the basic highlights of the national policy, it comes from the objectives that we had discussed. So, highlights, first and foremost, the tagline that has been given to this IPR policy is Creative India, Innovative India. Now, when it comes to the IPR policy, it would provide updation of various intellectual property laws. So, as I told you, that there are a lot of different acts and laws that we have in the country, but they are all working independently, and we want to connect them all, and we want them all under a single policy. So, that is basically what the highlight of the policy is also saying. At the same time, providing financial aid to, with the help of, let's say, VC funds or angel funds or banks, etc., so that, or even, let's say, foreign investments, so that we can generate the kind of capital that is required to create a value out of this IPR, so that we can get all the money that is required to start creating the better products. So for all that, also the financial aid would be required, or even if, let's say, in terms of taxes, etc., also they can be benefited. Then after that, also providing the financial support to the relatively less empowered groups of IP owners, that like farmers or small painters, as we just took the example, for them also to provide them IP friendly loans, so that they can use this money and create something for them, something that they can generate value with. So for all of them also, we need to have these kind of platforms that will help, these kind of supports that will help. Then DPIIT, or Department for Promotion of Industry and International Trade, they are serving as the monitoring body for all the things which are related to intellectual property rights, and even implementing of future in IPRs in India also. And then at the same time, it also tries to provide a protection to generic drugs. Now we'll discuss about generic drugs a little later, that what exactly do we mean by generic drugs. But we see that with regards to generic drugs also, there have been certain controversies around India, and we'll discuss them. And then also, there is a review that will also happen after every 5 years, and that also has been put as a part of the national policy on IPR, and this will help us in better updation. This will also help in better updation of the policies and the existing laws. So in this manner, there are all these highlights plus uh, on the same at the same rate, if we see, there are all these benefits that we derive out of this. So for example, let's say it will cover films, etc., films, music, books also. So all these things will also be covered now. Then a range of laws such as for semiconductor designs, geographical indicators, trademarks, etc., will also be there. And especially the newer things which are not there as a part of the framework but now are entering the framework, we have to look after them as well. So for example, right now, let's say when we are looking at artificial intelligence, especially the content that is being created by artificial intelligence, how they have to be also incorporated as a part of the policy. Then encourages improvement in access to healthcare, food security, and also environmental protection. Now, when we say environmental protection, this is also very, very crucial, because today what we see is that even if somebody is going for investment and somebody is asking for investment or money, first the investment firms also today see whether these companies are green or not, whether what is their carbon footprint, are they emitting a lot, are they responsible for a lot of emissions and a lot of pollution or lot of, let's say, wastage of resources, etc. So all these things will also be taken into account, and then only perhaps the investment will be made. So that's why it also makes it very essential for the company to ensure that they are sustainable or they are environmentally friendly and they are not damaging to the environment in any way, whether it is through emissions or through wastage or through resource mismanagement or whatever it is. It should not be the case. And that's why today you'll see that there are a lot of these companies that will try to project themselves as being environmentally friendly, as being sustainable. And it's everywhere. I mean, any industry that you see, you'll see that these kind of practices are there, especially in two industries, one being electronics industry and one being the textile industry. These are two industries where we see that there is a lot of emphasis and competition among the firms to at least project themselves as being eco-friendly. But unfortunately, they might not be eco-friendly all the time. They might want to tell you that they are eco-friendly and whatever they are doing is eco-friendly. So many a times this is also, there is a term that is associated with it. This is called as greenwashing. Greenwashing. So greenwashing is when, let's say, a firm projects itself as eco-friendly but is not. Then it is called as greenwashing. So in case of greenwashing, we have seen that there are so many brands and so many biggest of the companies which can be said to be in the practice of greenwashing. Some, now, for example, let's say in the fashion industry, we see this, that they would say that they are green. They would say that this is sustainable clothing or 60% sustainable or recycled clothes used and all that. But at the same time, that's one side of the story. They're not telling you about the second side of the story. Just go and ask them how much of water have they wasted in just creating these textiles, and you will be shocked. You just go and Google how much of water, how much of fresh water specifically, how much of fresh water is used in the world by the textile industry. What proportion of the entire fresh water usage in the industry is used by the textile industry? Just go and search, and you will be shocked to know the amount of money, amount of water that they waste. So that's why we see that there is immense amount of wastage that happens, but you will be told about, look, we use recycled cloth, so we are eco-friendly. So unfortunately, this is how it happens in the electronics industry. Also, we see two of the biggest phone manufacturers. If you look at the two of the biggest phone manufacturers, they would tell you that they are not giving you the adapter, the charging adapter with their mobile phones, because they are eco-friendly, because they, it would save from wastage of the product. Now that doesn't happen, it doesn't save you from the wastage of the product, because ultimately you might need that charger. The company hasn't given you the charger, you probably will go outside and buy it. Either you would buy it from that official store of these companies, or maybe you will go out and look for a cheaper model available. And whether this or that, ultimately this charger or the charging cable is coming to you separately, correct? Now coming to you separately has a big carbon dioxide emission associated with it. So for example, let's say I go to Amazon website and I just order a 1 day delivery for this charging adapter. Now what happens is, suppose I am sitting, let's say, in Bangalore. Then first and foremost, and I have ordered a 1 day delivery. So first and foremost, let's say if the product is sitting in a warehouse in Delhi or Gurgaon, it will first go from there to Delhi airport, from Delhi airport to Bangalore airport, from Bangalore airport to the Bangalore warehouse, from the Bangalore warehouse somebody will come on a bike to deliver it to me. Just imagine the amount of carbon dioxide emission that has happened in this entire process. Then in what sense are these companies saying that they are eco-friendly? So just a term that they are using, because they also know that people also do not know a lot, so people will just believe whatever they say. So unfortunately this is the truth, that they are doing this, but they are projecting it as something else. What they are simply doing is they are saving their cost. What they have basically given you for free, they now can sell you separately. If at all they, let's say they cared, then there was a way out. They would ask you, they would have two kinds of boxes. There is one box that has the charger, there's the other box that doesn't have the charger. So if I have been a user, let's say I have the 14th version of the phone, so then in the 15th version of the phone I do not probably need that charger, and then it's fine for me. But let's say if I am coming from the second company to this company, or a different operating system to this operating system, then I would need that charger. So make that box for me so that I don't have to buy it separately. But this is how the cost saving works, and something that is being projected as being eco-friendly practice. But that's not always the case. Now, some of the challenges that India still faces. Now, what we see is that there are a couple of areas which still have been a problem for the country. First is about issuing compulsory license. We'll discuss about that. Then, government being of the view that there is no way, or there is no urgent need to change the patent laws. And then something which is related to the section 3D of the Indian Patents Act. So we'll discuss about these problems, and plus also some of the problems related to the copyrights and the implementation of the copyright laws. And then there is something called as data exclusivity. So there are all these issues that we have to discuss. So first issue is around compulsory license. The first issue is about compulsory license. Second is about section 3D of the Indian Patents Act. Then the issue about copyright laws. And then something about data exclusivity in India. So these are four major problems that we have with regards to IPRs in India. So first is about compulsory license. Now, first and foremost, what do we mean by compulsory license? And in the context of compulsory license, there is something called as generic drugs that we also need to understand. Generic drugs. So first and foremost, what is compulsory license? So compulsory license basically is something that provides the owner of a patent or copyright licenses the use of their rights against a payment. Now what it simply means is that a government, let's say government of India, is allowed to give out compulsory license to certain companies. even though they are not the actual owners of the patent. Even then the patent can be given to them. So, and these can be done under emergency conditions. These can be done under emergency conditions. Now the thing is that what these emergency conditions are, internationally it has not been defined. So it has not been defined about what exactly do we see as an emergency condition. How do I define something that is an emergency condition? So there is no uh, a proper definition. So anything that a country sees as an emergency, it may not be the political or the financial emergency that is there in our constitution. We are not talking about that. Anything that a country can declare as an emergency because of certain urgent situations created. So it can be the scenario that we can say that it's an emergency condition, and under those emergency conditions we are allowed to give compulsory license. All right, we are allowed to give compulsory license under these conditions. Now, to understand what exactly these compulsory conditions are, first and foremost what we need is that uh, suppose, okay, let me just give you a simple example. If you think of the COVID-19 situation, now during COVID-19 we got the vaccines for like 300 to 700 etc, correct? Now these all vaccines are also patented. Vaccines are also new products or new processes, so that's why they are also patented. Now let's say the company that holds the patent for this vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, comes to the government of India and gets the patent in India. Now it has exclusive rights over this vaccine. Suppose that they start selling this vaccine for rupees 1 lakh per dose. So you have to spend rupees 2 lakhs for getting those two doses. Now, obviously, for a large population in the country, it will be impossible for them to even think of getting these 2 lakhs. But there will be a significant proportion of the country which will be able to afford it, which will be able to afford those 2 lakh rupees. Either they have that kind of money, or you can take a loan from somewhere and manage somehow. Because when you have to choose between 2 lakh and your life, you might choose your life, correct? So we somehow might have managed. All right, many of us perhaps would have managed. Now what happens is that what government of India here could have done, if let's say this hypothetical scenario was true, then government of India could have done this, that they would grant compulsory license to another company. Suppose that I am an Indian pharmaceutical manufacturer, the government of India will give this all the information about this patent to me, and would ask me that okay, you go and you start making the vaccine for a cheap rate, and I'll do start doing that. For this, the government would have paid the original company. Some amount would have been paid to the original company, that you just shut up, you just keep that money, and let us handle this, because this is an emergency for us. This is an emergency for us, and that is basically what can be done by a country, by saying that these are emergency conditions. So compulsory license will be given to an Indian manufacturer, that okay, fine, you go and you make the vaccine for very cheap, as cheap as possible. So and because the government is taking care of the charges, now I am not supposed to get profits out of this. I am just supposed to get it done without being at any kind of loss. So then in that case, we see that this is basically what we actually can do in this particular scenario. So that is what compulsory license is. Now what happens in India is that we say that India is the largest market for generic drugs. Now when we say generic drugs basically are the medicines or the drugs which have the exact same ingredients and formulation as a patented drug, but they have not been made by the patented company. And that's why they would be probably very cheap as compared to the patented drug. But at least they make it much easier for people to have access to these medicines. So that's why we see that India became a big market for generic drugs, and this is what a lot of multinational companies and pharmaceutical companies did not like about India. And they constantly have a problem with India, that India always gives preferences to the generic drugs, and we are not safe in the Indian markets, because if we go to the Indian markets, they would probably make a generic drug out of our patented drugs. So that's why we see that these kind of issues are there with regards to providing compulsory license. Now India has been of the view that something that is a life saving drug should either be cheaply available or it should be freely available. Now if these life saving drugs have a very high cost, then it becomes a challenge for the entire country to take care of. So that's why the government doesn't want that, and these are certain scenarios that we have seen. So for example, this is something that we have seen in the case of AIDS. Now in case of AIDS, what we know is that AIDS is not curable, correct? We know that AIDS is not curable, but there are certain medicines, there are certain drugs that can delay the death due to AIDS, which can at least let people live with AIDS for a significant amount of time. Now, this particular drug, when it came out for the first time, there was a US based company that came out with the drug, and the cost of this drug used to be $8,000. You would have to spend $8,000 per annum if you just want this drug so that you can delay the death due to AIDS. At least you can live with AIDS for a long time. But now $8,000 per annum is a big amount. I mean, in today's world, if you are just doing the conversion, we are talking about almost 6.5 lakh rupees, right? Almost 6.5 lakh rupees per annum. Now this is not a possible figure for a lot of population, a large number of population in India, and especially at this time, and this we are talking about almost 25 years back, and this was the time when the people who were also suffering with AIDS, they were largely from the poorer sections. So it was impossible for them to even think that this kind of a drug was even possible for them to buy. Now what happened here is that we have an Indian company, Cipla. Now Cipla came forward to the government and said that if you let us make this drug, we can bring down the cost to $2 per day. $2 per day. So you can say almost $730 per annum. And if this, they said that if you let us mass produce it, if you let us produce it in larger quantities, we can bring it down to $1 a day. We can bring down the cost to $1 a day. Now this was the time of the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government. Now what happened is the government said, okay, go forward, start doing it. And Cipla started. This created a huge uproar. This created a huge controversy because the Western countries did not like it, because these were the companies which basically had also spent a lot of money in making this. But at the same time, $8,000 per annum for people who cannot even afford their meals 2 times a day is impossible to even think of. And there's no other way out. There's no other way out. So this is where the government said, okay, fine, Cipla, you go forward and you start making this drug. Now Cipla made it. It became a huge problem. All these companies, they started attacking India. They started bad mouthing India. They also started saying that we are not going to do business in India. We are not going to sell our drugs in India. Not only this company, but basically they started to act like a cartel, that okay, we are not also going, you are also not going to go, you are not also going to go. Forget about only the pharmaceutical companies acting like a cartel. At that point of time, George W. Bush, the president of US, even he threatened India. Even he threatened India with sanctions if India does not withdraw this. Just imagine, on one hand, we are trying to save our population. Not only our population, we did not just distribute this drug only to the Indian population, but the South Asian countries, other countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, in all these countries also, and to African countries also, we gave out all these drugs for free. We did not charge anything from all these countries, and we gave it out for free. So this was a huge setback for these companies, which saw that they would make fortunes out of this kind of a drug. Didn't happen because of India. And just imagine that not only the companies, but even the president of a country comes to you and says that we are going to put sanctions on you if you don't stop mass producing these drugs. So on one hand, there is one country which is trying to save lives. On the other hand, you have a country that is also, that is actually trying to protect the rights of its firms. So the difference between a capitalist country and a socialist economy. So that is basically what happened at that moment of time. But thankfully, what also happened is that India started getting a lot of support from other countries of the world. A lot of world leaders also came in the support of India. A lot of activists, India based, elsewhere, even US based, they came in support of India. And under all this pressure that was created, everybody had to succumb and India won. And this is a case study that we say, where India was able to avert a pandemic that was about to begin, AIDS being the reason. Thankfully, India did not budge and we were able to save the world. So that's why, from this perspective, we need to understand, from the perspective of how all these things are so important, uh, from the perspective of what we have been doing. Then there is one more issue, and this is related to data exclusivity. Now, data exclusivity is where we see that a lot of foreign investors and MNCs, they allege that Indian laws do not protect against unfair commercial use of test data and other data that are submitted to the government. That even if their IPRs are protected, even if their patents are protected, their data are not safe, their test data etc are not safe. So they need better laws so that India does not let these data leak, because once the data leaks, other Indian companies can use that data. So that is what they mean by data exclusivity laws. Then also there has been a problem about the enforcement of the Copyrights Act. That enforcement of the Copyrights Act in India has not been that great. That even if, let's say, Copyrights Act do exist, they haven't been implemented well. So for example, 10-15 years back, you would see that if a film is about to release today on, let's say, on a Friday, the CDs, the DVDs of that film will already be available for 10 rupees in the market. So then in that case, nobody goes to watch the film. The producers, they lose a lot of money. All these things were happening. So we were able to curb them. With the books, we still see a problem. Especially, I mean, if let's say you are in Delhi, or if you go to Delhi, you'll see that photocopied books are available everywhere, pirated books are available everywhere. And not only in Delhi, why to blame Delhi? Everywhere in the country, we see that these are available very easily, although there are laws against it, but still they are just available, just because the enforcement of the laws are not that great. We are not being very strict with these laws. Even meme is an example, that creating a meme uh, could also potentially come under copyright laws, because we are using videos, photographs, etc., that belong to somebody, and I'm creating a meme out of it without taking the permission of that, and I'm making my own version of it. So that's why copyright laws will never like the memes, because that is where they lose. So we see that there are all these issues that we have seen. And then uh, so that's why we have to understand where the problems are. One more thing has been about what we discussed as section 3D, section 3D of the Indian Patents Act. Now section 3D of the Indian Patents Act talks about what can't be patented. So things that cannot be patented is what basically is uh, shown, I mean, is basically being uh, covered here. Now in this particular scenario, when it comes to the section 3D, uh, there are certain laws and rules. For example, let's say seed varieties, if they are natural, they cannot be patented in India. Plant varieties cannot be patented in India. Then if let's say there is only a small change that you have done in your product, you simply cannot come here and get it patented. There has to be a significant difference from the original product, then only you can get the patent. Because what happens in Western countries is very different. In Western countries, these kind of restrictions don't exist, so getting a patent there is a lot easier for those countries, and they want something similar in India. They want something similar in India so that they can basically keep getting patents in India as well. But in India, it's not allowed. So for example, let's say in the US, suppose that you just go out for a hike, just you go out for a walk in the forest somewhere, and you discover a new plant variety, you can just get it patented. In India, you cannot. In India, you cannot. Unless there is genetic engineering that you have used in the plant, you cannot ask for a patent. Similarly, let's say when it comes to patents, what happens is that they would do a small change, a very insignificant small change in their existing product. Especially in the pharmaceutical industry, this happens, that in the existing drug they'll make a very small change, and they'll say that now this is a new product, give me a new patent. This is called as patent evergreening. This is called as patent evergreening. That they would do a very small change in their existing product, and they'll say that now this is a new product, give me a new patent for it. In India, it's not allowed. You have to have a significant departure from the original product, then only your patent will be renewed, otherwise it will lapse. So that's why there are all these issues, and these companies, they want that India should also implement the patents laws just like how it's there in the US or in the European countries, but India hasn't done that yet, and I hope that we don't get there. Then the last topic here is traditional knowledge digital library. Now, one problem that we saw in India was that there were a lot of patents, etc., that were going out. So, for example, medicinal properties of turmeric were patented in the US. So, something that has been a traditional knowledge for us, that we know that we use turmeric in various different ways, and we have been taught generation after generation. We have been taught how to use turmeric in various different ways. So, something that has been a cultural part or a traditional part or a heritage of India was patented in the US. Then, similarly, we saw that even basmati was patented outside in the European countries. Even yoga postures, even yoga postures were being patented elsewhere. So, for example, now you would think that fine, what's the problem? Let somebody in Europe have that. Now, if somebody in Europe has a yoga posture patented in their name, it means that if, let's say, an Indian yoga guru goes to that country, they cannot perform that yoga there, because it has already been patented by somebody else. So that is where the problems are, that you cannot expand yourself there because somebody else has done it already. So those kind of issues would happen, and then the value of that patent also decreases. So that is why we saw that there were all these problems, and the solution to this problem is something that we saw as the traditional knowledge digital library. Because what is happening here is that there are a lot of traditional knowledge that we have which are present in the local languages, and we know that there are so many local languages, there are so many variations of the local languages. You go 100 kilometers from one place to another in the country, language changes. Even if it is, let's say, Hindi, even the version of Hindi changes, so the dialect of Hindi would change. So there are so many variations that would come in the entire country, right? So that's why we have to understand that this also means that a lot of knowledge remains localized, a lot of traditional knowledge remains localized, and sometimes it might be exploited by a company, especially a foreign company. So these kind of situations might arise. To protect from them, from to protect from these kind of scenarios, traditional knowledge digital library was thought of. So as a part of it, we saw that Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, that is CSIR, and Department of Ayush, which now has become Ministry of Ayush, they came together to make a digital library where sorry, where all the traditional knowledge that right now exists in local languages in the country, any part of the country, will now be gathered together and will become a part of a digital library where will translate all these local knowledges to five international languages: English, French, Spanish, German, and Japanese. So all the local knowledge will be translated to five international languages and made publicly available, so that they cannot simply be patented. Nobody can claim that this is theirs or this is what they discovered. It existed, and India started also contesting anyone who was doing this. or even internationally, if even in the US somebody was trying, even then India would go and fight against it. So we started doing all that so that we can protect our tradition, we can protect our heritage. So that is where we see that traditional knowledge digital library became very, very crucial in a manner, you can say, to provide a defensive protection, to provide a defensive protection to the rich traditional knowledge of the country. So in this manner we see that this is a, we say that this is a sui generis, or in a manner one of its kind. This means one of its kind mechanism that exists to protect the traditional knowledge, through which traditional knowledge shall be safeguarded from misappropriation. So that's where this became very, very crucial, and we saw that we were able to solve a lot of problems by doing this, right? So this brings us to the end of the lectures or end of the chapters that we had. Any questions from what we just discussed? Now, up next, basically, we'll have a brief discussion on the prelims and the mains question papers that came this year, 2023. So, okay, let me just discuss these two. I mean, the prelims and the mains questions first, and let me take all your doubts after that. That works better, I think. Right. And this is more about not you solving, but you seeing what questions, to understand what was the reason, why did they ask certain questions like this. Now coming to prelims 2023, these were the questions. Now this time, as you know, that the questions that have been asked, there is a new pattern. For example, if you look at this particular question, there is a new pattern in which they have asked the question. So if you see the first question, some microorganisms can grow in environments with temperatures above the boiling point of water. Some microorganisms can grow in environments with temperature below the freezing point of water. Some microorganisms can grow in highly acidic environment with a pH below 3. Now, what they have asked is, they have not asked you whether 1 is correct or 2 is correct or 3 is correct. They have asked you whether only one statement is correct, or two statements are correct, or all the three statements are correct, or none of the statements are correct. So this is basically what they have asked. Now, to answer this kind of a question, I mean, this is a very random question that they have asked, but the keyword here is some. Keyword is some. Unless you know for sure that this is a very exceptional case and a microorganism cannot at all exist in such an environment, you would have something that will exist always. So for example, above the boiling point of water, forget about above boiling point of water, we have found microorganisms that live near a volcano. So obviously they can live above boiling point of water. Then some microorganisms grow in environments below freezing point of water. Again, always possible that they can survive in very harsh cold conditions also. So yes, it is possible. Highly acidic environment, forget about the world, inside your stomach you have a pH which can be below 3, and there are microorganisms that can exist there. So that's why we even if you don't know example, even if you don't know about anything, you can still mark this answer. Now, I'm not giving poll here because these are new questions, and you know or you don't know, you'll be guessing in a lot of cases. So that's why I've not given the poll in this scenario. Now, the second question, if you see, consider the following heavy industries: fertilizer plants, oil refineries, steel plants. Green hydrogen is expected to play significant role in decarbonizing how many of the above industries? Now, green hydrogen obviously was a very, very important topic this year. Green hydrogen was a very, very important topic, was supposed to be a very, very important topic this year, and this is what we saw. And that's why there were two questions actually that came from green hydrogen. Now, when it comes to green hydrogen, basically both the questions actually came directly from the article that was there in the PIB. When the green hydrogen mission was launched by India, the PIB article is where they asked the question from. So this picture itself was there in that PIB article, and they are asking you about fertilizers, oil refineries, and steel plants. So you have fertilizers, refineries, and iron and steel plant all there in the same picture. So they directly asked you from here. So answer here also will be all the three. Then this question came about Wolbachia method is sometimes talked about with reference to which of the following: controlling the viral disease spread by mosquitoes, converting crop residues into packing material, producing biodegradable plastic, and producing biocar from thermochemical conversion of biomass. Now, this basically, when it comes to Wolbachia method, this has been on and off in the news at least for the last 5 years. At least for the last 5 years, if you look back in the newspapers, you'll find some articles related to the Wolbachia method. Now, in case of Wolbachia method, what we basically see is that it blocks the proliferation of harmful viruses and does not harm the mosquitoes. So what happens is that in the mosquitoes, they'll stop the reproduction of viruses, or they would stop the viruses from propagating. So that's why this is a kind of bacteria. Wolbachia bacteria is used to stop the propagation of virus. So that's why the viral diseases that are caused by mosquitoes is where we can use the Wolbachia method. So this is precisely what has been asked in this question. So this was not just a new current affairs. This was something that has been on and off in the news for a long time. Now they ask this question: aerial metagenomics best refers to which of the following situations? Now this was a question which was, I would say, a difficult question that they have asked about aerial metagenomics. But aerial metagenomics, if they have asked, the one way in which, or one reason why they would have asked this question, was this news about oldest DNA reveals life in Greenland almost 2 million years ago. And this is where they found genetic information from the environment. All right, they found genetic information from the environment. They collected genetic information from the environment, and that is where they got it from. Now that basically amounts to metagenomics. All right, so that basically is related to metagenomics, where we are collecting genes from the environment, sometimes also called as eDNA, environmental DNA. So metagenomics comes from there. Now aerial, aerial is related to air in a manner, right? Aerial. So the first option that you have here, collecting DNA samples from air of a habitat at one go, is where they would have asked this question from. Now context wise, I mean, this is, I could say, a weak link to why they would have asked this question. Now there was this in the new this question also, microsatellite DNA. The microsatellite DNA is used in the case of which of the following? So now when it comes to microsatellite DNA, just understand this, that why microsatellite DNA would have come. This was largely, I think, because of uh, the Nobel Prize that was given. The Nobel Prize in 2022 was given for the discoveries concerning the genomes of existing hominins and human evolution. Now, in this case, they had actually talked about something called as the satellite DNA. They had talked about the satellite DNA, and this satellite DNA basically is related to evolution. Satellite DNA is related to evolutionary relationships that you have between species. So that is the reason why something like this would have been asked. And even this news that scientists have finally filled the remaining 8% of the human DNA. Now, when it comes to satellite DNA, what we know is that these are DNAs that keep on repeating from one generation to another. These are the ones that the microsatellite DNA also, these are the ones that keep on repeating from one generations to another. So that's why they would be able to establish relations between two different generations. So that's why studying the evolutionary relationships between species of fauna is what can be established as microsatellite DNA. Then the next question, which of consider the following statements: carbon fibers are used in the manufacturing of components used in automobiles and aircrafts. Carbon fibers once used cannot be recycled. Now, when we talk about carbon fibers, we basically are talking about the carbon materials or carbon nanomaterials. So we discussed about a lot of carbon nanomaterials. We discussed about a lot of them are used in the manufacturing of components used in automobiles and aircrafts. We discussed about carbon nanotubes, right? And how carbon nanotubes can be used in all these cases. So that's there. Carbon fibers once used cannot be recycled. Now, we talked about uh, this thing also. If you remember, we talked about the 2020 question where they had said that they are biodegradable, and I told you that they are not should not be considered as biodegradable. So from that perspective, they should be reused. They would be reused or recycled because they cannot be destroyed easily. So once used cannot be recycled is wrong. They can be recycled. So that's why correct answer will be one only. Next question. Consider the following actions. Detection of car crash collision, which results in the deployment of airbags almost instantaneously. Detection of accidental free fall of a laptop towards the ground, which results in immediate turning off the hard drive. Detection of the tilt of the smartphone, which results in the rotation of display between portrait and landscape. Now they have asked you which of the above actions are related to accelerometer. Now, when it comes to accelerometer, what we basically know about accelerometer is that it will be useful whenever there is any kind of change in motion or change in direction, basically leading to a change in velocity. If there is something that can detect change in velocity. Now, in each of these three cases, this is what is happening. That in case of car crash, there will be a sudden stop. So sudden change in velocity. Free fall of a laptop, again, suddenly dropping, suddenly change in from rest to motion. So sudden change in velocity. Changing between portrait and landscape mode, sudden change in velocity. It was in one mode, all of a sudden changing to another mode. So in all these cases, we see that accelerometer actually are useful and they are used in all these cases. Then this question, objects in space and their description. We have cepheids, nebula, and pulsars. Now, nebula we discussed that they are origin of the stars, right? They are the dust gases, region with dust and gases in space. So now if you see the first description, this matches the description of nebula. So two of them are definitely wrong, correct? They are definitely wrong. Now after this, if you see, so then after that we have cepheids and pulsars. Now in case of pulsars also we see that they are uh, they have been in the news, and again on and off, the pulsars also have been in the news because there are a lot of activities that we have seen around them, and that has been the reason why they have come in the news in a lot of different articles. I mean, every year you'll see that pulsars will be in the news for one reason or another. So that's why we see that in all these cases we say that these are pulsating sources or these are the pulsars. Now these are basically uh, uh, there will be pulses of radiations that they will be throwing out, and this pulsar will be formed when a massive star dies, when the massive star is running out of its fuel. When we discuss that either neutron stars or black holes are formed, this is where pulsars basically come into existence. So this is what they have described correctly: neutron stars that are formed when massive stars run out of fuel and collapse. So then in that case, these two are wrongly matched and only one of them is matched correctly. And then lastly, this question was asked, which of the following countries has its own satellite navigation system? Australia, Canada, Israel, Japan. The correct answer is Japan. You have the Zenith system that they have. That, that is basically what uh, this answer is. So this was a direct question that they had asked. The zenith system, or also called as the quasi zenith system, quasi zenith system. So this basically belongs to Japan. So Japan is the only country which is out of these which are using which is using their own navigation system. And this question, so as I told you that the questions in defense, they often come in the context of current affairs. So if you look at this, we know that Agni 5 missiles, they have been constantly in the news. So that's why a question has come on Agni 5. So Agni 5 is a medium range supersonic cruise missile. Now, it is not medium range, it is a long range, or rather an intercontinental range missile, because they have a range of 5,000 to 5,500 kilometers. So this is not medium range by any stretch of imagination. Supersonic cruise missiles. These are not cruise missiles, these are ballistic missiles. So that's why this is wrong. Ballistic missiles are jet propelled at subsonic speeds. Remember what we discussed about ballistic missiles, that they travel very long distances, right? Very long distances, and we don't control their path. So that's why they are not jet propelled. Cruise missiles will be jet propelled. So that's why this is completely wrong. This basically what they have talked about is cruise missile, and what they have said about cruise missile is ballistic missile. So both of these statements are wrong. So this was in the news because of the test fire that happened with Agni 5 ballistic missile, and that is the reason why they might have asked this question. Now again, as I told you that there were two questions that were asked on green hydrogen. This is the second one. So with reference to green hydrogen, consider the following statements. And again, this also has come from, you can say, the same PIB article where they had discussed about what exactly can be done with the help of green hydrogen. So can be used directly as fuel for internal combustion. We can do that. Hydrogen based fuel can be made, or we can also blend it. So it can be blended with natural gas, and we discussed, if you remember, we discussed about HCNG, right? We discussed about HCNG, so that's why this is also true. Can be used in hydrogen fuel cell to run the vehicles. That's also true, that we can make fuel cells out of them. So all the three statements given here are correct. And then this statement that I mean a question I think that we have already seen. India, despite having uranium deposit, depends on coal for most of its electricity production. This is correct. We discussed that for 55 to 60% of electricity comes from coal. Then uranium enriched to the extent of at least 60%. This is wrong. We discussed that the enrichment is done just up to 3 to 5%. Correct? So that's why wrong statement. So if you see, statement C says statement number 1 is correct and statement 2 is incorrect. So that is what it is. So these are the questions that were asked in your prelims examination. Now, as you can see that the questions that you have is a mix of your static and dynamic portions, and some of them have come from some of things that we have discussed. Some of those things have come from what we have not discussed. But more importantly, a lot of these questions that have come, these questions were discussed in the class or in the current affairs sessions in one way or the other. There are a couple of questions only which were not discussed at all. One question that came on accelerometer was not discussed at all, and one question that came on aerial metagenomics. Although environmental DNA I had taught in the current affairs question, but I did not teach about metagenomics as such. So these two questions came. Otherwise, all the other questions that have come, they were either done in the classroom or they were done as a part of current affairs. So nothing came from outside of what we have been dealing with. So that's why I want you also to be on the same page and make sure that whatever we are discussing in the classroom plus the current affairs that we do for you, please make sure that you are actually looking after all these things. This time it was, I mean, I would say that it was lucky for me that the prelim sessions that I had taken just before the prelims examination, a lot of questions came from there. So I mean, something as difficult as even micro satellite DNA, I had discussed about satellite DNA there as well. So it was, but I would still say that it was luck that what I said in the prelims, I mean the sessions before prelims came in the examination. I would still not say that you should only depend on those sessions for your current affairs. Current affairs will have to be a regular process for you, will have to be a regular uh, thing, something that you keep doing on your daily basis. Otherwise, uh, you will be in a problem. So please make sure that current affairs you are regular with. Now, looking at the mains questions, there were three questions that came. The first time we saw that a question on artificial intelligence has been asked for the first time. So, introduce the concept of artificial intelligence, how it helps in clinical diagnosis, and do you perceive any threat to privacy of the individual in the use of AI in healthcare? So, this will be more about data breach and how the data can be misused, and also can create problems at an individual and societal levels. So a simple question asked just in 150 words, so it has to be a very concise answer. While discussing this, discuss the several ways in which microorganisms can help in meeting the current fuel shortage. So this is the second question that was asked with regards to microorganisms and how they are useful in the fuel. Now, again, there are multiple different things that you can think of. There are microbial fuel cells that we have. We discussed about algae and how they can be useful. In fermentation processes, they are useful. So there also they can create value. Plus, apart from that, we also see that they will also be useful when it comes to indirect processes in which we can use them in fuel fabrication. So there are multiple different ways in which they can be useful. And now the next question has been about Chandrayaan 3, that when it comes to Chandrayaan 3, what happened this time that we could not do last time? List the countries that have achieved the task. And this was a difficult part that they had asked. Introduce the subsystems in the spacecraft launch and explain the role of the virtual launch control center at Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, that which contributed to the successful launch from Sriharikota. Now, again, this was purely a current affairs question, and some of these things we had discussed as a part of current affairs, but never expected this to come, because when they ask about these subsystems, these are very technical things to be asked, and it was never expected that they would ask it in the paper, but they did ask it. The first two parts were easy to answer, would not be a difficult task for somebody to answer, but the third part is where it would not have been easy for anyone who went into the examination to answer this, because these are two technical things to answer. Although we covered it in current affairs, I'm sure that there would be others also who have given all this information about Chandrayaan 3, but frankly never expected such a question to be asked in the mains examination. But these were the three questions that came in this year's mains examination, and very expected lines, that as I told you that uh, from biotechnology, every second year one question comes. Energy, every year, every second year a question comes. So this was, you can say, a mix of energy and biotechnology. Then we discussed that every year a space technology question comes. So that happened last year's, I mean, now if I say, it doesn't matter, but last year's session that I had taken, I told them also that we should expect that an AI based question should come in the mains examination, and that is what happened this year. So so these are the things that came in your paper. So this is it about our discussions with regards to everything that we needed to cover, from static portions, plus also some of the current affairs news also that we kept on seeing from time to time in each and every subject, each and every topic. Now, if you have further questions, you can always drop an email to me at rasesh.kumar@byjus.com. So if you have any further questions, please let me know. We'll discuss this here. Is it important to read books? I have been telling this since class 1. I've told this 10 times. Go through the annotated PPTs, complete the annotated PPTs and current affairs. That's it. Difference between trademark and industrial design rights. So trademark basically is a sign or a symbol that you are using to represent your product, right? It is how you represent the product. For example, as I told you, the Byjus logo is an example that it represents the product. Industrial design right is the drawing of the product. So for example, let's say if I'm designing this pen, the drawing of the pen will be called as the industrial design right. Once again explain the accelerometer question, please. So accelerometer is a device, all right? Accelerometer is a device that will uh, detect the change in velocity, all right? If there is any change in velocity happening. So when, let's say, when we say that the laptop is suddenly falling, so if the laptop is suddenly falling, it was at rest, sudden change in velocity, so it can measure it similarly. And that's why you can deploy systems accordingly. In car crashes, so all of a sudden it will be in motion and suddenly comes to a stop, so airbags will be also working with these accelerometers. So that is basically what accelerometers are, which detects the change in velocity. How China simply making copies? Because the IPR laws in China are too stringent for anyone externally to even think of coming to China, and that's why China can do anything inside China. After deleted message, photo and video, where are all this message going? What message? Their digital presence is erased when we do that, so they're not going anywhere. Their presence is being erased. Please explain how can AI be threat in healthcare. So basically what happens is that with the help of AI, today what is happening is that first and foremost, there are a lot of predictive analysis also being done. So for example, let's say there are a bunch of lab reports and you feed it to an AI based system, and they'll give you a potential probability of what it could be and what it can't be. But many times you need a human brain to actually identify the problems, but that wouldn't happen. Secondly, the data collection. So what may happen is that a lot of data with regards to your healthcare records, etc., might be collected by AI, with the help of AI and the companies that are deploying AI in all these methods. So in that case, your privacy, your healthcare privacy is also being violated, and then it might be used later against you in one way or the other. For example, they might sell you something, they might offer you packages, etc., based on all the data that they have collected. So you have to think in these kind of directions when you are talking about AI threat in healthcare. The provisions of compulsory licensing can also be misused by countries to steal technologies. What's the solution for that? See, there are international bodies also that look after the IPR laws, and anything like that, if a country has a problem with another country, they can always raise it internationally. So that also is a provision. Thank you for doing all the efforts you've done to make our preparation easy and supporting us. Thank you so much for your wise comments. Thank you, everyone. There are a lot of comments that I'm not reading, but I see everything that you've written. Thank you so much for all the nice words. Called as smart mirrors. Will you take any extra class later? No, we have been able to complete everything on time, so not required. Yes, tomorrow is we have the doubt session tomorrow. So if you have anything, please bring them tomorrow exactly at 5, as we have been doing every day. Questions to be higher as compared to any other topic. But please don't depend on what's important and what's not. Always been saying that always prepare for your syllabus and forget about what I say or what anyone gives you a strategy that this is an important chapter or that is an important chapter. Always, always, always syllabus. Whatever's there in the syllabus is important. That should be the basic thumb rule for you. 26, whatever it will still be relevant. Only the current affairs that have taken from time to time in every chapter, those may not remain relevant anymore, but the static areas, the basic concepts will always remain relevant. Times evergreening, I've not written it there. Patent evergreening. Okay. So patent evergreening is when a patent owner makes small or insignificant changes in their product to extend their patent further. So this is called as patent evergreening. Don't go beyond that, and it's impossible to go beyond that unless you have even if you have a background, then only you would. Otherwise, anyway, it is impossible for you. So just the things that we did here. Me once more about that, to how police finds WhatsApp chat of somebody despite person deleting everything. I mean, see, there is also a chance that some of these can be restored. Some of the chats can be restored from the backups, etc. And uh, the cyber units will basically do that if at all the chats have been deleted. And there will be an official recognition of that also, that a person will also have to officially say that they have not deleted or deleted something, because then that amounts to hiding the facts, which is not good for them. Much for joining. Thank you everyone for having the patience to sit through these classes in the last 11 classes. I hope and I wish for all your success. If you have any doubts, you are always welcome to write me to rashesh.kumar@byjus.com. All right. So this is the end of the sessions. Tomorrow we'll definitely meet again, and this will be for the doubt session. Thank you.